What happens when a janitor walks into a billionaire's war room at 2 a.m. and rewrites a deal that could destroy an empire? You're about to find out, and it's not what you think. This isn't a fairy tale. This is about a man who made himself invisible to survive, and the moment he chose to be seen again. Before we dive in, do me a favor, hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. Now let's go. The thing about being invisible is that you choose it. Liam Carter learned that the hard way. At 32, he'd perfected the art of blending into walls. Head down, shoulders hunched just enough to suggest he didn't want conversation. Eyes that skimmed over people without ever quite meeting theirs. He wore his maintenance uniform like camouflage, navy blue, wrinkled at the elbows, name patch slightly crooked. He moved through the Apex Tower's marble lobby every night at 9:15, pushing a gray cart loaded with cleaning supplies, and not a single person who lived or worked there could have picked him out of a lineup. That was exactly how he wanted it. The Apex Tower wasn't just any high-rise. It was the high-rise, 43 floors of steel and glass stabbing into the Seattle skyline. Home to tech executives, venture capitalists, and people whose shoes cost more than most people's rent. Liam worked the night shift, which meant he saw these people at their worst. Drunk in the elevator, screaming into phones at midnight, sometimes crying in stairwells they thought were empty. He never said a word, just cleaned around them like they were furniture. Tonight was supposed to be like any other. Liam clocked in at the service entrance, nodded to Miguel at the security desk, and took the freight elevator up to the 37th floor. His daughter Sophie was asleep at home. Mrs. Chen from 4B was watching her, same as every weeknight. 6 years old and already used to her dad working nights. Already used to cereal for dinner and bedtime stories over FaceTime when he had to leave before she woke up. The 37th floor was executive territory. Quiet. Expensive. The kind of place where the carpet was so thick your footsteps disappeared. Liam started in the break room, emptying trash bins that were barely full, wiping down counters that already gleamed. The fluorescent hum of the vending machine was the only sound. He was halfway through mopping the hallway when he heard voices. Raised voices. Liam paused, mop in hand, and glanced toward the corner office at the end of the hall. The lights were on, which was unusual for this time of night. The door was closed, but the voices carried through anyway, sharp, tense, crackling with the kind of anger that comes right before something breaks. He should have kept walking. That was the rule. See nothing, hear nothing, exist as little as possible. It had kept him safe for 3 years. It had kept Sophie safe. But something made him stop. Maybe it was the edge of desperation in one of the voices, a woman's voice, clear and cold but fraying at the seams. Maybe it was the way the argument sounded less like a negotiation and more like a trap snapping shut. Or maybe, deep down, some part of him that he'd buried years ago recognized the sound of a disaster in motion. Liam set the mop against the wall and moved closer. Through the frosted glass of the office door, he could make out shapes. 4, maybe 5 people standing around a long table. The woman's voice cut through again, clipped and precise. I don't accept that. We restructure the terms or we walk. A man's voice, smooth and dismissive. Ms. Voss, you don't have the leverage to walk. Your Q3 numbers were abysmal. Your board is questioning your leadership. Frankly, you should be grateful we're still at the table. Silence. Then the woman again, quieter now, but no less sharp. This deal strips my equity down to nothing. You're not investing. You're taking over. Semantics. It's theft. The man laughed. Not a real laugh, just a sound meant to belittle. It's business. If you can't handle the terms, we'll find someone who can. Liam's hand tightened on the edge of the door frame. He knew that dynamic. He'd seen it 1,000 times in another life. The one he'd left behind. The setup. The trap disguised as opportunity. The slow suffocation of options until surrender looked like the only way out. He shouldn't care. He didn't care. Except his feet weren't moving. Inside the office, a chair scraped across the floor. Someone was leaving. The meeting was ending, and from the sound of it, the woman, Ms. Voss, whoever she was about to lose everything. Liam exhaled slowly. Then he knocked. The voices stopped. For a long moment, there was nothing but silence. Then footsteps, quick and annoyed, and the door swung open. A man in a suit that probably cost $5,000 stared down at him with the kind of irritation people reserve for telemarketers. Mid-50s, silver hair, a jawline that suggested he'd never been told no in his life. "We're in a private meeting," the man said, voice flat. "Come back later." "I know," Liam said. "I'm sorry, Later." The man started to close the door, but Liam caught it with his hand, not aggressive, just firm. "I can help." The man blinked, then he laughed, sharp, incredulous. "Excuse me?" "With the deal, I can help." Behind the man, Liam caught a glimpse of the woman. She was standing at the head of the table, arms crossed, wearing a charcoal blazer that looked like armor. Late 20s, maybe 30, dark hair pulled back tight, eyes like frozen glass, pale gray, sharp enough to cut. She was staring at him now, and her expression was somewhere between disbelief and fury. "Who the hell are you?" she asked. Liam hesitated. The truth sat heavy on his tongue, but he swallowed it. "I work here. Maintenance." One of the other men at the table, younger, expensive watch, slicked back hair, let out a bark of laughter. "A janitor? You've got to be kidding." The woman, Ms. Voss, didn't laugh. She just stared at Liam, eyes narrowing slightly, like she was trying to decide if he was insane or stupid or both. "You think you can help?" she repeated slowly. "With a 9-figure acquisition deal." "Yes." "Based on what? A YouTube video?" "Based on experience." That got her attention. She tilted her head, studying him the way someone might study a stray dog that had wandered into a boardroom. "Experience?" "Yes." "In what? Cleaning floors?" Liam didn't flinch. "In international finance, corporate restructuring, mergers and acquisitions. I spent 7 years at Hartman and Lyle before I left." The room went very, very quiet. Hartman and Lyle. One of the top-tier financial advisory firms in the world. The kind of place that didn't hire unless you had degrees from schools most people couldn't pronounce. The man in the expensive suit let out a slow breath. Bullshit. But the woman was still staring at Liam, and for the first time since he'd knocked, her expression shifted, just slightly, like a crack in ice. "Why would someone from Hartman and Lyle be working as a janitor?" she asked. Liam met her gaze. "Because I needed a job that let me be home when my daughter woke up." Silence. Then the younger man at the table laughed again, louder this time. "This is insane! Elena, you're not actually considering—" "Quiet, Brandon." The woman, Elena, didn't look away from Liam. "You said you can help. Prove it." Liam swallowed. This was a mistake. He should have kept walking, should have stayed invisible. But Sophie's face flashed in his mind. Her gap-toothed smile, the way she held his hand too tight when they crossed the street, the way she asked every night when he'd be home for breakfast. He stepped into the room. The table was covered in documents, contracts, spreadsheets, projections. A laptop was open at one end, screen filled with dense text. Elena gestured toward it. "You have 30 seconds, she said. "Tell me what's wrong with this deal." Liam moved to the table, eyes scanning the screen. The others watched him like he was a zoo animal. He ignored them. The contract was dense, pages and pages of legalese, clauses nested inside clauses. But Liam had spent years reading documents like this. His brain shifted gears, old pathways lighting up like circuits he hadn't used in years. He read. And then he saw it. Section 12, he said quietly. Subsection E, the equity conversion clause. Elena's eyes sharpened. What about it? It's designed to trigger automatically if your company's valuation drops below a certain threshold within 18 months. When it does, your shares convert to non-voting preferred stock. You lose control without losing ownership. On paper, you're still the CEO. In practice, you're a figurehead. The room went silent. Elena's jaw tightened. She turned to the man in the expensive suit. Richard? Richard's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind his eyes, just for a second. That's a standard protective clause. If the company underperforms, investors need assurance. It's not standard, Liam interrupted. It's predatory. And it's tied to performance metrics you don't control. The valuation threshold isn't based on revenue or profit, it's based on third-party assessment, which means if the right people whisper the right things to the right evaluators, your company's value tanks, and you're out. Elena stared at him, then at Richard. Richard's smile didn't falter, but it hardened. This is absurd. We're taking financial advice from a janitor? He's right, isn't he? Elena's voice was cold now, sharp as a blade. Richard hesitated. Just for a heartbeat. That was all the confirmation she needed. Elena stood slowly, hands flat on the table. Get out. Richard blinked. Elena, get out. For a moment, no one moved. Then Richard straightened his tie, his smile slipping into something uglier. You're making a mistake. I'll take my chances. Richard glanced at the other men, who gathered their things in silence. As they filed toward the door, Richard paused beside Liam. Hope your mop budget's good, he muttered. You're going to need it. Then he was gone. The door clicked shut. Elena stood alone at the table, staring down at the contract like it might bite her. For a long moment, she didn't move, didn't speak. Then she looked up at Liam. What's your name? Liam Carter. Liam Carter. She repeated it slowly, like she was testing the weight of it. You just blew up a deal I've been working on for 6 months. You would have lost your company. I know. She exhaled, something close to a laugh but sharper. I know. She sank into the chair at the head of the table, rubbing her temples. Up close, Liam could see the exhaustion carved into her face, shadows under her eyes, tension in her shoulders. She looked like someone who hadn't slept in weeks. They were going to bury me, she said quietly. Weren't they? Yes. And you saw it in 30 seconds. I've seen it before. Elena looked up at him, eyes searching. Why did you walk away? From Hartman and Lyle. Liam hesitated. The truth was too big, too raw, so he gave her the version that fit. My wife died, he said simply. I had a daughter to raise. The hours didn't work anymore. Elena's expression softened, just barely. I'm sorry. It was a long time ago. She studied him for another moment, then stood, brushing invisible dust from her blazer. When she spoke again, her voice was different, still sharp, but with something underneath, something that sounded almost like respect. I'm going to make you an offer, Liam Carter, and I need you to take it seriously. Liam waited. Help me fix this. Tonight. If you can rewrite this deal into something that doesn't destroy me, I will pay you more money than you've made in the last 3 years combined. And if I can't, then you go back to your mop and we both pretend this never happened. Liam looked at the contract, then at Elena. He thought about Sophie, about the medical bills still sitting on his kitchen counter, about the worn-out sneakers she'd need to replace before winter. Okay, he said. Elena's lips curved into something that might have been a smile. Good. You've got until sunrise. She turned toward the door, then paused, glancing back over her shoulder. And Liam, don't make me regret this. Then she was gone, and Liam was alone with the contract that could change everything, or ruin what little he had left. He sat down, pulled the laptop closer, and started reading. The city glittered below, indifferent and cold. Somewhere out there, Sophie was asleep, dreaming of things 6-year-olds dream about. Safe. For now. Liam cracked his knuckles and got to work. Wow. The first hour was the hardest. Not because the contract was difficult. It wasn't. Not really. The structure was clean, the language precise. Whoever had drafted it knew what they were doing. That was the problem. Every clause was carefully constructed to look reasonable on the surface while hiding traps underneath. It was beautiful, in a vicious sort of way. Liam had worked on deals like this before, back when he wore tailored suits and flew first class to meetings in Singapore and London. Back when his biggest problem was whether to order the salmon or the steak at client dinners. Back when Sarah was still alive. He shoved the thought away and focused on the screen. The equity conversion clause was the obvious poison pill, but it wasn't the only one. Liam found 3 more buried in the fine print. Provisions that would let the investors force asset sales, restrict Elena's ability to hire or fire executives, even dictate which markets the company could enter. By the time the ink dried, Elena would be CEO in name only. It was a masterclass in corporate takeover dressed up as partnership. Liam leaned back in the chair, rubbing his eyes. The office was silent except for the hum of the air conditioning and the faint buzz of the laptop. Outside, Seattle sprawled in a grid of lights, the Space Needle glowing pale against the dark. He thought about walking away. He could, right now. Just close the laptop, grab his cart, finish his shift, pretend none of this had happened. But then what? Go home to Sophie, tell her everything was fine. Keep scraping by on a paycheck that barely covered rent and groceries. Keep telling himself that invisible was safe. Except it wasn't. Not really. Invisible meant powerless. And powerless meant one bad month, one medical emergency, one landlord deciding to raise the rent, and everything fell apart. Liam opened the laptop again and kept reading. By hour 2, he'd outlined a counteroffer in his head. The trick wasn't to reject the deal outright. That would just send Elena's board into panic mode and make her look weak. The trick was to restructure it so that both sides got something real. Give the investors enough security to feel confident without handing them a knife to stick in Elena's back later. It meant reworking the valuation metrics, tying them to performance indicators Elena actually controlled. It meant replacing the equity conversion clause with a staged buyout option that gave the investors an exit path without gutting her authority. It meant adding protections that looked like compromises but were actually walls. It was delicate work, the kind that required precision and patience. Liam had both. By hour 3, he was deep in the numbers, building financial models to support the new structure. His fingers moved across the keyboard with the muscle memory of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. The exhaustion that usually dragged at him by this point in the night had disappeared, replaced by something he hadn't felt in years. Focus, clarity, purpose. He was good at this. He'd forgotten how good. At some point, the door opened. Liam didn't look up.
"Still alive?" Elena's voice, dry and edged with something that might have been amusement. "Mostly." She crossed to the table, heels clicking softly against the polished floor, and set down 2 paper cups. Coffee. The expensive kind from the break room that Liam wasn't technically supposed to touch. "Thought you might need this," she said.
Liam glanced up. Elena had taken off her blazer. Her blouse was wrinkled, sleeves rolled to her elbows. She looked less like a CEO and more like someone who'd been in a fight. "Thanks," he said, reaching for one of the cups. Elena sat down across from him, cradling her own coffee. For a moment, neither of them spoke. "How bad is it?" she asked finally. "Bad, but not unsalvageable." "That's not particularly comforting." "It's honest." Elena's lips twitched, almost a smile. "Fair enough." She watched him for a moment, eyes sharp and assessing. "You're not what I expected." "What did you expect?" "I don't know. Someone louder, maybe. Someone trying to prove something." "I'm too tired to prove anything." Elena laughed, short and surprised, like it had escaped before she could stop it. "Yeah, I know the feeling." Liam took a sip of coffee. It was good. Too good. The kind that probably cost $8 a cup. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "Depends on the question." "Why didn't you see it? The clauses." Elena's expression hardened, just slightly. Not angry, defensive. "I saw them," she said. I thought I could manage them. I thought if I was smart enough, worked hard enough, I could make it work anyway. That's not how this kind of deal works. I know that now." She set her coffee down, fingers drumming against the table. "My father built this company from nothing. Took him 30 years. When he died, I inherited it. 29 years old, no MBA, no board experience. Just a law degree and a lot of people who thought I'd tank the whole thing within 6 months. Did you?" "No. I kept it alive. Grew it even, but barely." She exhaled a sound halfway between frustration and exhaustion. "And now I'm about to lose it to a group of venture capitalists who see it as a fucking line item on a spreadsheet." Liam looked at her, really looked, past the sharp suit and the sharper edges. He saw the same thing he saw in the mirror every morning, someone trying not to drown. "You're not going to lose it," he said quietly. Elena met his eyes. "You sound sure." "I am. Why?" "Because I'm going to rewrite this deal so they can't take it, and you're going to sign it." For a long moment, Elena just stared at him. Then she leaned back in her chair, something shifting in her expression. Not quite trust, but close. "You know what the crazy thing is?" she said. "What?" "I believe you." Liam didn't know what to say to that, so he just nodded and went back to work. Elena stayed. She didn't help, this wasn't her area, but she stayed, sipping her coffee, occasionally asking questions. Liam explained as he went, breaking down the clauses in plain language. Elena listened, sharp and focused, absorbing every word. At one point she asked, "How did you end up at Hartman and Lyle?" Liam hesitated. The memories were old, buried under years of distance. "Scholarship," he said finally. "State school. Double major in finance and economics. Graduated top of my class. Hartman recruited me straight out of undergrad." "That's impressive." "It was a long time ago." "And your wife?" Liam's hand stilled on the keyboard. "Sarah. We met in college. Got married the year I started at Hartman. She was a nurse. Pediatric ICU." Elena waited, sensing there was more. "She died in a car accident," Liam said quietly. "Sophie was 2. Drunk driver ran a red light." "Jesus." "Yeah." He didn't say the rest. Didn't say that Sarah had been on her way home from a double shift. Didn't say that he'd been in London closing a deal when he got the call. Didn't say that he'd walked away from Hartman 6 months later because he couldn't stand being the person who chose conference rooms over bedtime stories. Didn't say that he still dreamed about the phone call sometimes. The way the officer's voice had been so calm, so professional, like he was reading a weather report. Elena didn't push. She just nodded, a small, sad acknowledgement, and let the silence settle. They worked through the night. By 4 a.m., Liam had a new contract drafted. Not perfect, nothing ever was, but solid, fair. The investors would still get their returns, but Elena would keep control. The traps were gone, replaced with safeguards. He leaned back, eyes burning, and rubbed his face. "Done," he said. Elena, who'd been dozing in the chair beside him, sat up sharply. "Done?" "Done." She moved to the laptop, scanning the document. Her eyes moved fast, skimming clauses, checking numbers. Liam watched her read, watched the tension in her shoulders start to ease. Finally, she looked up. "This is good," she said. "This is really good. It'll work. They're not going to like it. They don't have to like it. They just have to accept it." Elena's smile was sharp and tired and real. "I'm starting to think you might actually pull this off." "We," Liam corrected. "We're pulling it off." Elena's expression softened, just for a second. Then her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and her face went pale. "What?" Liam asked. "Richard just emailed. He's pulling the deal, completely. Says we're not aligned on vision." Liam's stomach dropped. "When?" 20 minutes ago." "Shit." Elena stood, pacing. "If this deal falls through, I'm finished. The board will force me out. They'll sell to someone worse." Liam's mind raced. Richard pulling out wasn't just a power move. It was a message. He'd rather kill the deal than let Elena rewrite the terms. Unless... "Wait," Liam said slowly. "What if he's bluffing?" Elena stopped. "What?" "Think about it. Richard spent 6 months on this deal. He's got time and money invested. If he walks away now, he gets nothing. But if you panic and accept his original terms, he wins without a fight." Elena's eyes narrowed. "You think he's trying to scare me into caving? I think he's betting you can't afford to call his bluff." Elena stared at him. Then she grabbed her phone and started typing. "What are you doing?" Liam asked. "Calling it." She hit send, then showed Liam the screen. "Richard, understood. We're withdrawing from negotiations as well. Best of luck with your next venture." Liam's heart hammered. That's a hell of a gamble. "So is everything else." They waited. 5 minutes passed, then 10. Elena's phone buzzed. She looked at the screen, and her expression shifted. Shock, then something close to triumph. "He's backpedaling," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "He wants to meet. First thing tomorrow morning. Says he's open to discussing revised terms." Liam exhaled, a laugh escaping before he could stop it. He blinked. He blinked. Elena looked at him, and for the first time all night, she smiled, really smiled. "You were right," she said. "We were right." Elena crossed to him, extending her hand. Liam stood and shook it. Her grip was firm, strong. "Thank you," she said quietly. "You're welcome." Outside, the sky was starting to lighten. pale gray bleeding into the dark. Dawn was coming. Liam gathered his things, exhaustion crashing over him now that the adrenaline was fading. "Go home," Elena said. "Get some sleep. I'll handle Richard." Liam nodded. He turned toward the door, then paused. "Miss Voss?" "Elena. Elena, for what it's worth, you're better at this than you think." Elena's smile was small but real. "So are you." Liam left. He took the freight elevator down, the city waking up around him. By the time he reached the lobby, the first shift workers were trickling in. Baristas, delivery drivers, people starting their days as his ended. Miguel waved from the security desk. Liam waved back. Outside, the air was cool and damp. Seattle smelled like rain and coffee. Liam walked to the bus stop, hands in his pockets, and waited. His phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Chen. "Sophie's up. Made her pancakes. She's asking for you." Liam smiled and typed back, "On my way." The bus arrived. Liam climbed on, found a seat by the window, and watched the city roll past. He'd stepped out of the shadows tonight, taken a risk, and somehow, against every odd, it had worked. But as the bus carried him home, Liam couldn't shake the feeling that he'd just opened a door he'd spent years keeping closed, and he had no idea what was waiting on the other side. Sophie was still in her pajamas when Liam got home. She was sitting at the kitchen table, drowning her pancakes in syrup, legs swinging under the chair. Mrs. Chen stood at the sink, washing dishes, and she turned when Liam walked in. "Long night?" she asked, eyebrows raised. "Something like that." Sophie's head snapped up. "Daddy!" She scrambled out of her chair and launched herself at him. Liam caught her, lifting her up even though his arms felt like lead. She smelled like maple syrup and strawberry shampoo. "Hey, Bug," he said, pressing a kiss to her hair. "You eat breakfast?" Mrs. Chen made pancakes, the good kind, with chocolate chips. "Spoiling her again?" Liam said, glancing at Mrs. Chen. The older woman shrugged, a small smile tugging at her lips. "Someone has to." Liam set Sophie down and she immediately grabbed his hand, pulling him toward the table. "Come eat with me. Mrs. Chen made extra." "I will. Just let me change first, okay?" Sophie pouted but nodded, climbing back into her chair. Liam headed to the bedroom, peeling off his uniform as he went. His reflection in the mirror looked like hell, dark circles under his eyes, stubble shadowing his jaw, shoulders slumped with exhaustion. He splashed water on his face, changed into sweatpants and a t-shirt, and forced himself back to the kitchen. Mrs. Chen had already left. Sophie was finishing her pancakes, syrup smeared across her cheek. "You got syrup everywhere," Liam said, sitting down beside her. "I know." She grinned, gap-toothed and unbothered. Liam grabbed a napkin and wiped her face. She squirmed, but let him. "How was school yesterday?" he asked. "Good. We did art. I made a dragon." "Yeah? What color?" "Purple. With green eyes. Miss Carter said it was the best one." "I bet it was." Sophie studied him, her expression suddenly serious. "You look tired, Daddy." "I'm okay." "You're always tired." Liam's chest tightened. He reached over and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "I'm fine, Bug. I promise." She didn't look convinced, but she didn't push. She just leaned against him, small and warm, and Liam wrapped an arm around her shoulders. They sat like that for a while, the morning light filtering through the kitchen window, the city waking up beyond the glass. Eventually, Sophie wiggled free and ran to grab her backpack. Liam followed, helping her pack her lunchbox, reminding her to brush her teeth, tying her shoes when she got frustrated with the laces. By the time he walked her to the bus stop, the exhaustion was dragging at him like an undertow. "Love you, Bug," he said, crouching down to her level. "Love you too, Daddy." She hugged him tight, then climbed onto the bus without looking back. Liam watched until the bus disappeared around the corner. Then he walked home, collapsed onto the couch, and was asleep within seconds. He woke to his phone buzzing. For a moment he couldn't remember where he was. The apartment was dim, curtains drawn, the only light coming from the crack under the door. His phone buzzed again, insistent and loud. Liam fumbled for it, squinting at the screen. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something, instinct maybe, or curiosity, made him swipe to accept. "Hello? Liam Carter?" The voice was clipped, professional, female.
not Elena. Yeah, who's this? My name is Rachel Nguyen. I'm Ms. Voss's executive assistant. She asked me to reach out. Liam sat up, rubbing his eyes. Is everything okay? Everything's fine. Better than fine, actually. The meeting with the investors went well. Ms. Voss wanted me to thank you and let you know she'd like to speak with you. In person. When? This afternoon, if you're available. 3 o'clock at the Apex Tower. Liam glanced at the clock on the wall. It was just past noon. He'd slept for 4 hours, maybe 5. I'll be there, he said. Excellent. I'll let her know. The line went dead. Liam stared at the phone for a long moment. His brain felt foggy, thoughts moving through molasses. He stood, stretched, and headed for the shower. The hot water helped clear his head, but the exhaustion still clung to him like a second skin. By 2:30, he was on the bus heading downtown. He'd changed into the only decent clothes he owned, a button-down shirt that was wrinkled but clean, dark jeans, boots that needed new soles. He looked like someone trying to dress up, but not quite succeeding. The Apex Tower loomed ahead, glass and steel cutting into the sky. Liam stepped off the bus and walked through the front entrance. Not the service door this time, but the main lobby, all marble and chrome and people in suits moving with purpose. It felt strange walking through the front door, like crossing some invisible line he'd been careful never to approach before. The woman at the front desk looked up as he approached. Can I help you? I have a meeting with Elena Voss, 3 o'clock. She glanced at her computer, then back at him, expression polite but skeptical. Name? Liam Carter. Her eyebrows lifted slightly, just enough to suggest surprise. One moment. She picked up the phone, murmured something Liam couldn't hear, then hung up and handed him a visitor badge. 37th floor. Miss Nguyen will meet you at the elevator. Thanks. Liam clipped the badge to his shirt and crossed to the elevators. A group of executives stood waiting, talking in low voices about quarterly projections and market share. They didn't look at him. He was used to that. The ride-up was smooth and silent, the kind of elevator that didn't rattle or groan. When the doors opened, a woman was waiting. Rachel Nguyen was maybe 30, sharp-featured, wearing a gray suit that looked expensive and practical in equal measure. She extended a hand. Mr. Carter, thank you for coming. Just Liam. Liam, she gestured down the hall. Follow me. They walked past offices with frosted glass doors, conference rooms, a break area with a coffee machine that probably cost more than Liam's rent. Rachel moved quickly, heels clicking against the polished floor. Ms. Voss is finishing a call, she said. She'll be with you shortly. She led him to the same office from last night, or this morning, technically. The contract was gone, the table cleared. Sunlight poured through the floor-to-ceiling windows, turning the city below into a grid of light and shadow. Can I get you anything? Coffee? Water? I'm good, thanks. Rachel nodded and left, closing the door behind her. Liam stood by the window, hands in his pockets, and looked out at Seattle. From up here, the city seemed almost manageable. Neat. Controlled. Nothing like the chaos at street level. He could see the harbor in the distance, ferries cutting white lines through the gray water. Somewhere down there, Sophie was in school, probably working on her times tables or drawing more purple dragons. The thought steadied him. The door opened behind him. Liam, he turned. Elena stood in the doorway, blazer off, sleeves rolled up, looking like she'd fought through another 12 hours and won. Her hair was pulled back in a ponytail now, a few strands escaping around her face. She looked younger somehow, less armored. She stepped inside and closed the door. You came, she said. You asked. Elena's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. Most people would have run after last night. I'm not most people. No, you're not. She crossed to the table and gestured for him to sit. Liam did. Elena sat across from him, folding her hands on the table. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence stretched, not uncomfortable, but weighted. Richard accepted the revised terms, Elena said finally. Liam exhaled, relief washing over him. That's good. Better than good. He agreed to everything. The valuation metrics, the buyout structure, all of it. He tried to push back on a few clauses, but I held firm. She paused, a flicker of something, satisfaction, maybe pride, crossing her face. Because you told me to.
You didn't need me to tell you that. Maybe, but I listened anyway. Elena leaned back in her chair, studying him with those sharp gray eyes. I owe you, more than I can repay with a thank you. You don't owe me anything. I disagree. She reached into a folder on the table and pulled out a piece of paper, slid it across to him. Liam looked down. It was a check, made out to him, for $50,000. His brain stuttered. He read the number again, convinced he'd misread it. 50,000, 5 and 4 zeros. That's what you earned, Elena said, voice matter of fact. What you saved my company is worth 10 times that, but I know you won't take more, so I'm starting here. Liam stared at the check. $50,000. More money than he'd made in 2 years. More money than he'd seen since leaving Hartman and Lyle. He thought about the medical bills sitting on his kitchen counter, the stack of past due notices he'd been ignoring, Sophie's shoes with the holes in the soles. I can't take this, he said quietly. Yes, you can. Elena, Liam. Her voice was firm, leaving no room for argument. You walked into a room full of people who wanted you gone and saved a deal they'd spent months trying to destroy. You didn't ask for credit, you didn't ask for anything, but you're getting this anyway. Liam's hands felt numb. He looked up at her. Why? Because you deserve it, and because I don't believe in letting debts go unpaid. For a long moment, Liam just sat there, the check between them like a bridge he didn't know how to cross. His throat felt tight. When was the last time someone had just given him something without strings attached, without expecting something in return? Finally, he folded the check carefully and slipped it into his pocket. Thank you, he said, and his voice came out rougher than he intended. Elena nodded, something softening in her expression. Then she leaned forward, elbows on the table, and the softness disappeared, replaced by sharp focus. Now, let's talk about what happens next. Liam frowned. What do you mean? I mean, I have a problem, and I think you can solve it. What kind of problem? Elena stood and walked to the window, arms crossed, silhouetted against the light. Richard wasn't the only investor circling. There are 3 more deals on the table right now, all with similar issues. Clauses buried in fine print, terms designed to look good until they're not. My legal team is competent, but they're trained to spot obvious red flags. They're not trained to think like the people trying to screw me. She turned back to face him. I need someone who can spot the traps, someone who knows how these people think, someone who's been on the other side of the table. You need a consultant. I need you. Liam's stomach tightened. I have a job. Cleaning floors. It pays the bills. Barely. Elena's voice wasn't cruel, just honest. You're surviving, Liam, not living. There's a difference. Liam stood, jaw tight. It's stable. It lets me be there for my daughter. That matters more than money. I'm not asking you to abandon your daughter. I'm asking you to stop wasting your talent on work that doesn't challenge you, doesn't pay you what you're worth, and doesn't give you any kind of future. The words hit harder than they should have. Liam looked away, out at the city, at the sprawl of buildings and lives he couldn't see from here. What are you offering? He asked finally. A consulting role, part-time, at least to start. You review my contracts, flag issues, advise on negotiations. You set your own hours, work from home if you want. But when I need you at the table, you show up. And the pay? Double what you're making now as base salary, plus bonuses for every deal you help close. And if it works out, we can talk about something more permanent down the line. Liam turned to look at her. Why me? You could hire anyone, someone with current credentials, someone who hasn't spent the last 3 years mopping floors. Elena crossed her arms, and for a moment she just looked at him, really looked at him, in a way that made Liam feel exposed. Because you see things other people miss, she said. Because you don't have an ego getting in the way. Because you're not trying to prove anything or climb any ladder. You just want to do the work and do it right. She paused. And because I trust you. I don't trust easily, Liam, but I trust you. The silence stretched between them, heavy with possibility. Liam thought about Sophie, about the medical bills, about the worn-out shoes and the rent checks that always came too close to bouncing. He thought about the fear that lived in his chest every month, the fear that one emergency, one unexpected expense, would pull the floor out from under them. He thought about last night, the way it had felt to be good at something again. To use his brain for more than figuring out the most efficient way to clean 37 floors. To matter. But he also thought about the last time he'd had a job like this. The late nights that turned into all-nighters. The missed birthdays and school plays. The way Sarah had looked at him sometimes, like she was living with a stranger. "I need to think about it," he said. Elena nodded, no judgment in her expression. "Fair enough. Take the weekend. Let me know Monday." She walked him to the door, then paused, hand on the handle. "For what it's worth," she said quietly, "I meant what I said. You're better at this than you think." Liam met her eyes. "So are you." Elena smiled, small, genuine, almost surprised. Then she opened the door, and he left. The weekend passed in a strange blur, the check sitting in Liam's wallet like a weight he couldn't ignore. Saturday morning, he took Sophie to the park. It was one of those crisp fall days, the kind where the air smelled like dying leaves and wood smoke. Sophie ran ahead, her jacket unzipped despite his protests, and launched herself onto the swings. "Push me, Daddy! Hi!" Liam pushed, watching her arc up toward the sky, her laughter cutting through the morning quiet. Other parents dotted the playground, mothers scrolling through phones while toddlers climbed on the equipment, a dad teaching his son to throw a football, an older couple walking a small dog along the path. Normal people, living normal lives. Was he still one of them? Or had he already crossed some line by walking into Elena's office last night? "Higher!" Sophie shrieked, and Liam pushed harder. After the park, they stopped at the corner store for groceries. Sophie helped him pick out apples and bread, insisted on getting the cereal with the cartoon tiger on the box, even though the generic brand was cheaper. Liam almost said no, force of habit, but then he remembered the check in his wallet. "Okay," he said. "Tiger cereal it is." Sophie beamed. At the register, the total came to $43. Not much, but enough to make Liam's chest tighten with the old familiar anxiety. Except this time, he had $50,000 in his pocket. Enough to buy this store's entire inventory of Tiger cereal if he wanted. The thought was so absurd, he almost laughed. That night, after Sophie was asleep, Liam sat at the kitchen table and stared at the check. $50,000. He could pay off the medical bills from Sarah's accident, the ones he'd been chipping away at for 3 years, $500 at a time when he could manage it, less when he couldn't. He could fix the car that had been making that grinding noise for 6 months, buy Sophie new clothes that actually fit, instead of waiting for hand-me-downs from Mrs. Chen's granddaughter. He could breathe for the first time in years. But taking the consulting job? That was different. That meant stepping back into a world he'd left behind, a world that had chewed him up and spit him out once already. What if it happened again? What if he couldn't balance it? What if he missed Sophie's school play because he was stuck in a meeting? What if Elena needed him at midnight and he had to choose between work and being there when his daughter woke up from a nightmare? What if he turned into the person he'd sworn he'd never be again, the one who chose work over everything else? His phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number, no pressure, just wanted to say thanks again. Liam stared at the message. Then he typed back, "You're welcome." A pause. Then 3 dots appeared. "You're going to say yes, aren't you?" Liam laughed despite himself. "I don't know yet. Liar? Maybe." The dots appeared again, then stopped. Started again. "For what it's worth, I meant what I said about setting your own hours. If your daughter needs you, she comes first. No exceptions. I'm not interested in hiring someone who's too burned out to think straight." Liam read the message twice. Then he set the phone down and stared at the kitchen ceiling, where a water stain had been slowly spreading for the past year. He didn't sleep much that night. Sunday morning, Sophie dragged him to the community center for a craft fair Mrs. Chen had mentioned. They spent 2 hours wandering between booths, handmade soaps, knitted scarves, paintings of the Seattle skyline, pottery shaped like mushrooms and owls. Sophie stopped at every table, asking questions, touching everything the vendors would let her touch. Liam followed, hands in his pockets, letting her lead. At one point, she stopped in front of a booth selling handmade jewelry, bracelets made of colorful beads and thin silver wire, necklaces with tiny charms shaped like stars and moons. "Can I get one?" she asked, looking up at him with those wide brown eyes that were exactly like Sarah's. Liam checked the price. $15. Not much, but enough to make him hesitate. Old habits. Then he thought about the check in his wallet, about the fact that $15 didn't have to matter anymore. "Yeah," he said. "Pick whichever one you want." Sophie's face lit up like someone had flipped a switch. She studied the bracelets for a full 5 minutes, holding different ones up to the light, trying them on, asking Liam's opinion even though she clearly had her favorite already picked out. Finally, she settled on one with purple and green beads, arranged in an alternating pattern. "Like my dragon," she explained, holding it up. The woman running the booth smiled, older, with silver hair and kind eyes. "Good choice. I made that one myself." She helped Sophie put it on, and Sophie held her wrist up, admiring the way the beads caught the light. "Thank you, Daddy," she said, and threw her arms around his waist. Liam hugged her back, throat tight. "You're welcome, Bug." They walked home slowly, Sophie chattering about the fair, about the lady who'd had a booth full of rocks that were actually geodes, about how she wanted to make jewelry too when she grew up, or maybe be a dragon trainer, or maybe both. Liam listened, half his attention on her voice, the other half on the question spinning in his head. What kind of life did he want to give her? Not just survival. Not just getting by, month to month, hoping nothing broke or went wrong. Something more than that. Something better. But at what cost? That night, after Sophie was asleep, Liam sat on the couch and pulled out his phone. He stared at Elena's number for a long time. Then he typed, "I'm in, but I need conditions." The reply came within seconds. "Name them." Liam took a breath and started typing. Ishruito. 1. I work from home unless absolutely necessary. 2. No meetings before 9 a.m. or after 6 p.m. 3. If my daughter needs me, I leave. No questions asked. 4. This is part-time. If it starts interfering with my life, I walk. He hit send before he could second-guess himself. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, a response. Done. All of it. See you Monday, 9 a.m. My office. We'll get you set up. Liam set the phone down and leaned back, closing his eyes. He just stepped back into the fire. He could only hope he wouldn't get burned. Monday morning, Liam dropped Sophie at school and took the bus downtown. He was wearing the same button-down shirt, freshly ironed this time, and he felt like an imposter walking through the Apex Tower lobby. Rachel met him at the elevator again, this time with a tablet in hand and an actual smile. "Good morning, Liam. Ms. Voss is expecting you. She's asked me to get you set up first." "Set up? You'll see. Follow me." She led him down a different hallway, stopping at a small office near the end. It wasn't much. A desk, a chair, a window overlooking the city, a bookshelf that was currently empty. But it was clean and quiet and had actual walls instead of a cubicle partition. "This is yours," Rachel said. Liam stared. "This is temporary, right?" Rachel's expression didn't change. "That's up to you." She gestured to the desk, where a new laptop sat waiting, still in its box. "Computer's there. Login credentials are in the folder. Ms. Voss will be here in 10 minutes. Coffee's in the break room, 2 doors down on the left. Any questions?" "Is this really necessary? I thought I'd be working from home." "You will be. But Ms. Voss thought you should have a space here for when you need to come in. Meetings, collaborative work, whatever." Rachel checked something on her tablet. "Also, HR needs you to fill out some paperwork. Tax forms, direct deposit, the usual. I'll email you the links." She left before Liam could process what was happening. He stood in the doorway of his office, and felt the surreal weight of it all crash over him. 3 days ago, he'd been emptying trash cans on this floor. Now he had a desk, a window, a laptop still in its box. He sat down slowly, half expecting someone to come in and tell him there'd been a mistake. No one did. The laptop took a few minutes to set up. When it finally loaded, Liam found his email already configured, a welcome message from Rachel waiting in his inbox, and a folder labeled Active Deals sitting prominently on the desktop. He opened it. 3 files, 3 contracts, each one dense and complicated, hundreds of pages of legal language and financial projections. He was reading the first one when the door opened. Elena stepped inside, coffee in hand. She looked tired but alert, the kind of tired that came from running on adrenaline and caffeine. Her hair was down today, falling past her shoulders, and she was wearing a navy blazer over a white blouse. "You're early," she said. "Habit." Good habit. She set a second coffee on his desk. Black. No sugar. That's yours. Rachel told me you drink it black. Don't tell me she was wrong. She wasn't. Good. You're going to need it. Elena pulled up the only other chair in the room and sat across from him, nodding toward the laptop screen. What do you think so far? Liam gestured to the first contract. I think you have a talent for finding terrible deals. Elena laughed, sharp and surprised. That's one way to put it. This one's a mess. The royalty structure alone is going to bleed you dry in 2 years. Can you fix it? Probably. But I'll need access to the other side's financials and their previous contracts if you have them. I want to see if this is a pattern or a one-off. You'll have everything by end of day. Liam nodded and kept reading. Elena watched him for a moment, something unreadable crossing her face. You look different, she said. Liam glanced up. Different how? I don't know. Less guarded, maybe. Liam didn't know what to say to that, so he just shrugged and went back to the contract. Elena stood, smoothing her blazer. I'll let you work. If you need anything, Rachel's down the hall. I've got a board meeting at 10, but I should be free after lunch if you want to go over what you found. Sounds good. She paused at the door, one hand on the frame. And Liam? He looked up. Welcome aboard. She left and Liam was alone with the contracts and the city beyond the window. He took a sip of the coffee. It was good, much better than the instant stuff he made at home, and got to work. The first contract was even worse than he'd thought. Not just the royalty structure, but the entire framework was designed to shift risk onto Elena's company while protecting the other party from any downside. It was the kind of deal that looked attractive on the surface. Big numbers, promising projections, but would strangle her in the long run. Liam spent 2 hours breaking it down, highlighting problem clauses, making notes in the margins. The work was familiar, almost meditative. His brain shifted into a mode he hadn't accessed in years, connections forming faster than he could track them consciously. By lunch, he'd drafted a preliminary analysis and a list of questions that needed answering before any counteroffer made sense. He was deep in the second contract when Rachel appeared with a sandwich and a bottle of water. Ms. Voss thought you might forget to eat, she said, setting them on his desk. Liam blinked, realizing he'd been staring at the screen for 3 hours straight. Thanks. She also wanted me to remind you that you're not expected to solve all 3 deals today. Pace yourself. Liam smiled despite himself. I'll try. Rachel left, and Liam forced himself to take a break. He ate the sandwich, turkey, and avocado, better than anything he would have packed for himself, and looked out the window at Seattle sprawling below. Somewhere down there, Sophie was in school, probably at recess now, playing with her friends, showing off her dragon bracelet. The thought steadied him, reminded him why he was doing this. He finished the sandwich, drank the water, and went back to work. By the time Elena knocked on his door at 2, Liam had flagged major issues in all 3 contracts and started drafting counterproposals for 2 of them. You've been busy, Elena said, looking at the notes covering his screen. You weren't kidding about these being problematic. Show me. Liam walked her through what he'd found. Elena listened intently, asking sharp questions, occasionally making notes on her phone. She was quick, faster than most executives he'd worked with at Hartman. She didn't need concepts explained twice, and she grasped the implications of each issue almost before he finished describing them. When he finished, Elena sat back, arms crossed, expression thoughtful. The second deal, the IP licensing one. That's the most urgent. We're supposed to sign next week. Don't. I wasn't planning to, but I need an alternative ready or my board is going to lose their minds. Give me 48 hours. Elena studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded. Okay, 48 hours. She stood to leave, then paused. How does it feel, being back at this? Liam considered the question. Strange. Good, mostly. A little terrifying. Yeah, Elena said softly. I know the feeling. After she left, Liam worked for another 2 hours before forcing himself to stop. He packed up the laptop, said goodbye to Rachel, and took the bus home. Sophie was waiting when he walked in, Mrs. Chen hovering in the kitchen. Daddy, you're home early. Liam checked the time. 6:15. Earlier than he'd been home in months. Yeah, Bug, wanted to have dinner with you. Sophie's smile could have powered the whole city. They ate mac and cheese at the kitchen table. Sophie telling him about her day, about the math test she'd aced, about how her friend Emma had fallen off the monkey bars but was okay. After dinner, they watched a movie together. Sophie curled against his side, her dragon bracelet catching the light from the TV. When she fell asleep halfway through, Liam carried her to bed, tucked her in, and stood in the doorway for a long moment, watching her breathe. Maybe this could work. Maybe he could have both. The work that challenged him and the life that mattered. Maybe. He went back to the kitchen, opened his laptop, and worked until midnight. The week blurred past in a rhythm Liam hadn't experienced in years. Mornings with Sophie, breakfast, the bus stop, her hand in his as they walked. Days at the kitchen table, or sometimes at the Apex office, diving deep into contracts, finding the hidden traps, drafting solutions. Evenings with his daughter, homework and dinner and bedtime stories. Nights alone with the laptop, pushing through exhaustion because the work demanded it. By Wednesday, he'd rewritten the second contract completely. Elena presented it to the other party on Thursday. They accepted on Friday with minor revisions. Elena called him that afternoon, voice tight with something between excitement and disbelief. They took it. All of it. Liam leaned back in his kitchen chair, a tired smile tugging at his lips. Good. Good? Liam, you just saved me $2 million and probably another 3 down the line. You would have figured it out eventually. Maybe, but not in time. A pause. There's a bonus coming. 20,000. It'll be in your account Monday. Liam's hand tightened on the phone. 20,000. On top of the 50, plus the salary that had just started. You don't have to... I know, I'm doing it anyway. And before you argue, consider it an investment. I need you sharp, not stressed about money. After she hung up, Liam sat at the table for a long time, staring at nothing. $70,000 in a week. More than he'd made in 3 years. That night, he took Sophie out for pizza at the place she loved. The one with the arcade games and the terrible animatronic band. He let her order whatever she wanted, play as many games as she wanted, and when she asked for dessert, he said yes without hesitation. On the way home, she fell asleep in the car, her dragon bracelet still on her wrist, a smile on her face. Liam carried her inside, tucked her into bed, and allowed himself to believe that maybe, just maybe, he was building something that could last. The third contract turned out to be a trap within a trap. Liam found it on a Tuesday morning, 2 weeks into his new role, sitting at his kitchen table while Sophie ate cereal and hummed a song from school. The contract looked clean at first glance. A partnership agreement with a European tech firm, standard terms, reasonable projections. Elena's legal team had already given it preliminary approval. But something felt wrong. Liam couldn't put his finger on it at first. Just an itch at the back of his brain, the kind that came from years of reading contracts written by people who were very good at hiding things. He started digging. By noon, he'd found the first thread. A clause buried in Section 18 that referenced a subsidiary company. Nothing unusual about that, except the subsidiary wasn't listed in any of the financial disclosures. Liam pulled up the corporate registry, cross-referenced the ownership structure, and felt his stomach drop. The subsidiary was owned by a holding company. The holding company was owned by another holding company. 3 layers deep, he found a name that made everything click into place. Richard Carmichael, the same investor Elena had just finished fighting off. Liam grabbed his phone and called her. I'm in a meeting, Elena answered, voice clipped. Pull the third contract, don't sign anything. A pause. What did you find? Richard, he's buried in the ownership structure, 3 layers deep. If you sign this deal, you're essentially partnering with him through a shell game. You're sure? I'm looking at the registry right now. Elena was quiet for a moment. Liam could hear voices in the background, someone asking a question. I need to call you back, she said. The line went dead. Liam sat there, staring at his laptop screen. The corporate structure mapped out in a dozen open tabs. Sophie had finished her cereal and was now coloring at the other end of the table, her dragon bracelet sliding up and down her wrist as she worked. Daddy, what's wrong? She asked without looking up. Nothing, Bug. Just work stuff. You look mad. Liam forced his expression to soften. I'm not mad, just thinking. His phone buzzed, a text from Elena. Meeting in 1 hour. My office. Bring everything you found. Liam looked at Sophie, then at the clock.
He had 45 minutes to get downtown. "Sophie, we need to call Mrs. Chen."
By the time Liam made it to the Apex Tower, Elena was pacing in her office like a caged animal. Rachel stood by the window, tablet in hand, looking uncomfortable. Two other people Liam didn't recognize sat at the conference table, a man in his 50s wearing an expensive suit, and a woman maybe 40 with sharp eyes and sharper jewelry.
"Liam," Elena said the moment he walked in, "this is David Park, my CFO, and Jennifer Chen, General Counsel. Walk them through what you found."
Liam set his laptop on the table and pulled up the ownership structure. "The European firm you're partnering with, Tech Venture Solutions, looks legitimate on the surface, but they're owned by a subsidiary called Nordic Holdings Group. Nordic is owned by Atlantic Investment Partners. Atlantic is owned by Carmichael Capital." Jennifer leaned forward, squinting at the screen. "Richard Carmichael's firm?" "The same one we just restructured away from," Elena said, arms crossed. David's face had gone pale. "How did we miss this?" "Because it's designed to be missed," Liam said. "The ownership layers are spread across 3 jurisdictions: Luxembourg, Ireland, and Delaware. Each one has different disclosure requirements. Unless you're specifically looking for it, it just looks like standard corporate structure." Jennifer was already typing on her phone. "If this is accurate and we sign this deal, Richard gets access to our technology, our client list, and a seat at the table we just kicked him away from," Elena finished. Her voice was cold, controlled, but Liam could see the fury underneath. "He set this up, knew we'd reject a direct partnership, so he came in through the back door." "Allegedly," Jennifer said automatically, the lawyer in her hedging, even as her expression said she believed every word. David stood, running a hand through his hair. "We're supposed to sign on Friday. The board's already approved it." "Then we unapprove it," Elena said. "On what grounds? We can't just pull out 2 days before signing without cause. They could sue." "The cause is fraud, which we'd have to prove. Richard's smart enough to keep his name off the paperwork. A good lawyer could argue he's just a passive investor." Elena turned to Liam. "How solid is this?" "The ownership structure is public record. Anyone can verify it. Whether it constitutes fraud or just aggressive business strategy is a legal question." Jennifer was shaking her head. "We need more. A pattern of deception, evidence of intent. Otherwise, it's just corporate structure, and we look paranoid." "Or smart," Elena shot back. "The board won't see it that way." The room went silent. Liam could see the calculation happening behind Elena's eyes, the chess game of what she could prove versus what she knew was true. Finally, she turned to Jennifer. "Draft a letter postponing the signing. Cite due diligence concerns. Keep it vague." "They won't accept that." "They don't have to accept it. They just have to read it." Elena looked at David. "Pull together every piece of data we have on Tech Venture. Financial records, board composition, previous deals. I want to know if Richard's fingerprints are anywhere else." David nodded and left, already on his phone. Elena turned to Liam. "And you? Keep digging. If Richard's involved in this deal, there's a reason. Find it." The office cleared until it was just Elena and Liam. She sank into her chair, the fury draining out of her, leaving exhaustion in its wake. "I should have seen this coming," she said quietly. "No one saw it coming. That was the point." "You saw it. I was looking for it. After the first deal, I knew Richard wasn't going to just walk away." Elena looked at him, something shifting in her expression. "How did you know where to look?" Liam hesitated. The answer took him back to Hartman and Lyle, to deals he'd worked on that operated in the same gray areas, to the realization that had eventually driven him out of that world. "Because I used to help set up structures like this," he said finally. "Not this exact play, but similar ones. Shell companies, layered ownership. It's not illegal, but it's designed to obscure, to give you plausible deniability while still maintaining control." Elena studied him. "You sound like you didn't enjoy it." "I was good at it. That's not the same thing." She nodded slowly, like that made sense to her. "Well, I'm glad you're on this side now." Liam spent the next 3 days buried in financial records and corporate filings. He worked mostly from home, Sophie doing homework beside him, Mrs. Chen bringing over dinner when she noticed he'd forgotten to eat. At night, after Sophie was asleep, he'd go back to the laptop, following threads that led to more threads, building a map of Richard's investments. The pattern emerged slowly. Richard wasn't just involved in tech venture. Over the past 18 months, he'd quietly acquired stakes in 4 other companies, all of them in adjacent industries to Elena's, all of them potential partners or competitors. It looked like diversification on the surface. But when Liam mapped it out, he saw something else. Richard was building a network, and if the tech venture deal went through, Elena's company would be the keystone, the piece that connected everything and gave Richard leverage over an entire sector. Liam called Elena at 11 p.m. on Thursday. "This better be good," she answered, voice rough with exhaustion. "Richard's not trying to take over your company. He's trying to build an empire around it." Silence. "I'm sending you a document," Liam continued, already pulling up the file. "It maps out his investments. If he gets tech venture connected to your operation, he controls the ecosystem. Every partner you work with, every competitor you face, he's got a piece of it." "That's—" Elena broke off. Liam heard papers rustling. "That's actually brilliant, in a completely terrifying way." "Yeah." "Can we prove intent?" "I can prove the investments are real. Whether a court would call it anti-competitive or just smart business is another question." "I don't need a court. I need my board to understand what's happening." "Then show them this." More rustling, then Elena's voice, quieter now. "Thank you, Liam. Seriously." "You're welcome. Get some sleep." "You too." She hung up. Liam closed his laptop and sat in the dark kitchen, listening to the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic. Tomorrow, Elena would present this to her board. They'd either believe her or think she was paranoid. Either way, the tech venture deal was probably dead, which meant Richard would try something else. The thought should have worried him. Instead, Liam felt something he hadn't experienced in years, the cold, clear focus of being in a fight he understood. He went to bed and slept better than he had in weeks. Friday's board meeting lasted 6 hours. Liam wasn't there. Elena hadn't asked him to come, and he was grateful for that. He spent the day at home with Sophie, who'd stayed home from school with a cold. They built a blanket fort in the living room, watched movies, and ate grilled cheese sandwiches for lunch and dinner. At 8 p.m., his phone buzzed. Board voted to postpone indefinitely. Tech Ventures pissed, threatening legal action, but Jennifer thinks they're bluffing. "We're safe. For now." Liam texted back. "Good. That's good." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. "Drinks tomorrow? To celebrate not getting screwed?" Liam stared at the message. It felt like more than just a professional courtesy. Like a line being crossed, or maybe just acknowledged. "I have Sophie this weekend. Bring her. I know a place with good food and a play area. 3 p.m.? Liam looked over at his daughter, currently buried under 3 blankets and half asleep against his shoulder. Okay. The next afternoon, Liam and Sophie took the bus to a restaurant Elena had suggested, a casual place near the waterfront with picnic tables outside and a view of the harbor. Sophie perked up when she saw the play structure, a complicated mess of slides and climbing nets. Elena was already there, sitting at one of the outdoor tables, wearing jeans and a sweater instead of her usual blazer. She looked younger, less armored, almost normal. "You must be Sophie," Elena said, standing as they approached. Sophie, suddenly shy, hid behind Liam's leg. "Say hello, bug," Liam prompted gently. "Hi," Sophie whispered. Elena crouched down to Sophie's level. "I like your bracelet. Is that a dragon theme?" Sophie nodded, holding up her wrist to show the purple and green beads. "I thought so. Dragons are excellent. My favorite is the one that guarded the golden apples. Do you know that story?" Sophie shook her head. "I'll tell you over lunch. Deal?" Sophie looked up at Liam, who nodded. "Okay," she said, still quiet but warming up. They ordered burgers for Liam and Elena, chicken tenders for Sophie, and sat at the picnic table watching boats cut across the water. Elena told Sophie the story of La Dawn, the 100-headed dragon, making it funny instead of scary, giving the dragon a personality and a grumpy disposition about having to guard apples all day. Sophie laughed, the sound bright and unguarded, and Liam felt something in his chest loosen. After lunch, Sophie ran off to the play structure. Liam and Elena sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching her climb. "She's great," Elena said. "Yeah, she is." "Looks like her mom?" "Yeah." Liam's throat tightened. "Same eyes, same stubbornness." Elena nodded, not pushing. They sat quietly, the afternoon sun warm on their faces. "Can I ask you something?" Elena said after a while. "Sure." "Why did you really leave Hartman and Lyle?" Liam had been expecting this question for weeks. He still didn't have a good answer. "Sarah died," he said slowly, "and I realized I'd spent 7 years optimizing my life for a career that didn't actually make me happy. I was good at it, made a lot of money, helped a lot of rich people get richer." He paused. "But when she was gone, and it was just me and Sophie, none of that mattered. The only thing that mattered was being there, so I walked away." "Do you regret it?" "Sometimes, when the bills pile up, or when I see Sophie wearing shoes with holes in them, but mostly no." Elena was quiet, turning her coffee cup in her hands. "I think I'm afraid of that." "Of what?" "Of waking up one day and realizing I've optimized my life for something that doesn't matter. My dad built this company from nothing. When he died, everyone expected me to fail. So I worked 80-hour weeks to prove them wrong, made every decision based on what would keep the company alive. And I did it. The company's thriving." She looked out at the water. "But I'm 30 years old, and I can't remember the last time I did something just because I wanted to. The last time I had a conversation that wasn't about work. The last time I felt like a person instead of a position." Liam looked at her, really looked. Past the sharp competence and the careful control, he saw what he'd been too tired to see before. Someone drowning in a different way than he was, but drowning all the same. "You're having one now," he said quietly. Elena glanced at him, surprised. "A conversation that's not about work," Liam clarified. "With another person." A small smile tugged at Elena's lips. "I guess I am." Sophie's voice cut through the moment. "Daddy, watch me go down the slide!" Liam waved. "I'm watching." Sophie went down head first, came up laughing, and ran back to do it again. "She's lucky," Elena said, "to have you." "I'm lucky to have her." They stayed until Sophie wore herself out, which took another hour. By the time they left, the sun was starting to sink toward the horizon, turning the water gold. Elena walked them to the bus stop. "Thank you for coming," she said. "I needed this. A reminder that there's more than just the next deal." "Anytime." The bus pulled up. Liam lifted Sophie, who was already half asleep, and climbed aboard. Through the window, he saw Elena standing on the sidewalk, hands in her pockets, watching them go. Something had shifted between them. Liam wasn't sure what it was yet, but he felt it. The next week brought 2 things: a new contract to review and a problem Liam hadn't anticipated. The contract was straightforward, a distribution deal with a West Coast logistics firm. Clean terms, reasonable projections, no obvious traps. Liam flagged a few minor issues, suggested some revisions, and sent his analysis to Elena by Tuesday. The problem came Wednesday morning. Liam was walking Sophie to the bus stop when his phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello? Mr. Carter? This is Marcus Webb. I'm an attorney representing Tech Venture Solutions." Liam's stomach dropped. "Okay. I'm calling to inform you that my client is pursuing legal action against Voss Technologies for breach of contract and tortious interference. Your name has come up in our investigation as a potential witness." "A witness to what?" "To the circumstances surrounding Ms. Voss's decision to terminate partnership discussions. We believe you may have provided analysis that was materially misleading." Liam's grip tightened on the phone. Sophie was chattering beside him, oblivious. "I provided factual information based on public records. Information that was presented in a context designed to create suspicion and torpedo a legitimate business deal. We'd like to schedule a deposition." "I'm not talking to you without a lawyer." "That's your right, Mr. Carter, but I'd encourage you to cooperate. This could get uncomfortable if you don't." The line went dead. Liam stood at the bus stop, heart hammering, watching Sophie climb onto the bus without really seeing her. They were coming after him, not just Elena. Him. He called Elena the moment he got home. "They contacted you too?" she asked before he could speak. "Just now. Said they want to depose me." "It's a scare tactic. Jennifer says they don't have a case. We didn't breach anything. We postponed based on legitimate due diligence concerns." "They're calling my analysis misleading." "It wasn't misleading. It was accurate. But if they can convince a jury I was biased or that I had some agenda..." "Liam,"
Elena's voice cut through his spiral. You did nothing wrong. You found information that was publicly available and presented it honestly. They're trying to intimidate you. Don't let them. Liam sat at his kitchen table staring at the wall. I can't afford a legal fight, Elena.
You won't have to. If this goes anywhere, which it won't, the company covers your legal fees. You were acting on our behalf. That's not in my contract. Then we'll amend your contract. Liam, listen to me. I'm not letting them hang this on you, okay? Liam exhaled slowly. Okay? I need you to send me everything you have on the tech venture analysis. Every document, every source, every note. Jennifer wants to be prepared. I'll do it today. After they hung up, Liam sat for a long time, the kitchen silent around him. This was the part he'd forgotten about, the part that came with stepping back into this world. You didn't just fight the deals fought back. That evening, Liam met with Jennifer Chen in a conference room at the Apex Tower. She was all business, sharp questions, careful notes, no wasted words. Walk me through your methodology, she said. Liam did. Explained how he'd traced the ownership structure, which registries he'd used, how he'd verified each layer. And you didn't communicate with anyone at Tech Venture or their parent companies? No. Didn't access any confidential information? Everything I used was public record. Jennifer made a note. Good. That's our defense. You conducted independent research using publicly available information. No breach of confidentiality, no tortious interference. But they're still going to make this messy. Probably, but messy doesn't mean they'll win. She looked up at him. Have you been served with anything official? Just the phone call. If you get served, don't sign anything. Call me immediately. And don't talk to their lawyers again. At all. Even if they call and sound friendly. Understood. Jennifer closed her folder. For what it's worth, you did the right thing. Richard's play was sophisticated. Most people wouldn't have caught it. Most people aren't being threatened with depositions. Most people aren't worth threatening. It wasn't particularly comforting, but Liam appreciated the honesty. He left the Apex Tower as the sun was setting, the city lights beginning to flicker on. His phone buzzed. A text from Elena. How'd it go with Jennifer? Fine. She's thorough. She's the best. You're in good hands. A pause, then another message. I'm sorry you're dealing with this. Not your fault. Feels like it is. Liam stopped on the sidewalk, people flowing around him. He typed slowly. I knew the risk when I took the job. Still worth it. The 3 dots appeared, then stopped. Started again. Dinner tomorrow? Just us. No contracts, no lawyers, no Richard. I'll cook. Liam stared at the message. This was definitely a line being crossed. He thought about Sarah, about the promise he'd made to himself after she died, that he wouldn't let work consume his life again. Wouldn't let anything pull him away from Sophie. But this didn't feel like work consuming his life. This felt like something else, something that scared him for completely different reasons. Okay. What time? 7:30. I'll text you the address. That night, Liam lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, Sophie asleep down the hall. 3 weeks ago, he'd been a janitor, invisible, safe. Now he was caught in a legal fight with a billion-dollar firm, working for a CEO who'd just invited him to dinner and genuinely unsure which part terrified him more. He'd wanted to matter again. Careful what you wish for. Sophie came down with a full-blown cold on Thursday, which meant Liam spent the day at home, juggling soup and cold medicine and cartoons while trying to review a contract on his laptop. By evening, she was feverish and clingy, wanting him to sit beside her on the couch while she dozed. At 6, Liam texted Elena. Sophie's sick. Need to cancel tonight. Sorry. The reply came immediately. Don't apologize. Is she okay? Just a cold. She'll be fine. Anything you need? Medicine? Soup? Liam smiled despite himself. We're good. Thanks. Rain check? Yeah, definitely. He set the phone down and looked at his daughter, curled under a blanket, her dragon bracelet still on her wrist, even though she was mostly asleep. This was the right choice. This had to come first. But part of him wondered what might have happened at that dinner, and whether he'd just dodged a bullet or missed an opportunity. Sophie was better by Saturday, which meant Liam spent the weekend trying to make up for lost time, playground trips, a movie matinee, building Lego castles on the living room floor. Normal dad stuff, the kind of thing he'd been doing for 3 years. Except it felt different now. Because in the back of his mind, he was thinking about contracts, about Richard's next move, about the legal threat hanging over him, about Elena. He pushed it all aside and focused on Sophie. But it kept creeping back in. Sunday night, after Sophie was asleep, Liam's phone buzzed. "How's Sophie?" "Much better. Back to full dragon training energy." "Good. And how are you?" Liam stared at the question. The honest answer was complicated. Tired. "But okay. Want to try that dinner again? Tuesday?" Liam hesitated, then typed. "Yeah, I'd like that." Tuesday came too fast. Liam dropped Sophie with Mrs. Chen, who raised her eyebrows but didn't ask questions, and took the bus to the address Elena had sent. It was in Queen Anne, a neighborhood he didn't usually visit. Tree-lined streets, old houses mixed with modern townhomes, the kind of place where people had yards and didn't worry about rent. Elena's place was a townhouse near the top of the hill, with a view of the city through the front windows. She answered the door in jeans and a gray sweater, hair down, no makeup. She looked nervous. That made Liam feel slightly better about his own nerves. "Come in," she said. The interior was surprisingly sparse. Nice furniture, but not much of it. No pictures on the walls, no personal touches. It felt like someone lived there but hadn't quite moved in. "I'm still decorating," Elena said, catching his expression. "Or I keep telling myself I will eventually. Drink?" "Whatever you're having." She poured 2 glasses of wine and led him to the kitchen, where something was simmering on the stove that smelled amazing. "I should warn you," Elena said, "I'm not actually a great cook, but I can follow a recipe without burning down the kitchen, so that's something. Better than me. I mostly survive on pasta and takeout." "Sophie lets you get away with that?" "Sophie thinks mac and cheese is a food group." Elena laughed, and some of the tension broke. They ate at her small dining table, chicken with lemon and herbs, roasted vegetables, bread that Elena admitted she'd bought from the bakery down the street. It was good, better than good. And they talked, not about work, not about contracts or Richard or legal threats, about other things, small things. Elena told him about growing up in her father's shadow, always feeling like she had to prove herself twice as hard. Liam told her about meeting Sarah in college, about how she'd been the one who made him laugh when he took everything too seriously. "She sounds amazing," Elena said quietly. She was. "Do you still miss her?" "Every day. But it's different now, less sharp, more like an ache than a cut." Elena nodded, turning her wine glass slowly. "I don't think I've ever had that. Someone I'd miss like that." "You've never been in love?" "I've been in relationships, but love." She shook her head. "I don't think I've let myself get close enough." "Why not?" "Because closeness is vulnerability, and vulnerability is weakness. At least that's what I thought." She looked at him. "I'm starting to think I might have been wrong." The air between them shifted, became heavier, charged. Liam should have said something, changed the subject, made a joke. Instead, he just looked at her, and she looked back. "Liam," she said softly. "Yeah? I'm glad you walked into my office that night." "Me too." They sat like that for a moment, the space between them feeling both vast and impossibly small. Then Elena stood, breaking the spell. "Dessert?" "Sure." She brought out store-bought chocolate cake, and they ate it standing at the counter, the conversation shifting back to safer ground. But something had changed. Some line had been acknowledged, even if they hadn't crossed it yet. When Liam left, it was close to midnight. Elena walked him to the door. "Thank you for coming," she said. "Thank you for dinner. We should do this again." "We should." She smiled, and Liam realized he'd never seen her smile like that before. Soft, unguarded, real. He left before he could do something stupid. But walking to the bus stop, he couldn't stop thinking about the way she'd looked at him, and wondering what the hell he was getting himself into. The lawsuit dropped on Friday morning like a bomb through Liam's kitchen window. He was making Sophie breakfast, scrambled eggs, slightly burnt because he'd been distracted reading email on his phone, when the doorbell rang. A process server stood on the other side, clipboard in hand, expression professionally blank. "Liam Carter?" "Yeah." "You've been served." The envelope was thick, official, stamped with a court seal. Liam signed for it, closed the door, and stood in the hallway staring at the thing like it might explode. "Daddy, eggs are smoking," Sophie called from the kitchen. Liam shoved the envelope in a drawer and went to save breakfast. He didn't open it until after he'd dropped Sophie at school. Sat in the empty apartment at the kitchen table and forced himself to read. Tech Venture Solutions versus Voss Technologies. And listed as a co-defendant, Liam Carter. They were suing for breach of contract, tortious interference, and defamation, asking for $50 million in damages. Liam's hands went numb. $50 million. The number was absurd, probably inflated for effect, but it didn't matter. Even if they only won a fraction of that, even if the case got thrown out, he was now tied to a lawsuit that could drag on for years. His phone rang. "Elena." "They served you?" she asked without preamble. "Yeah, just now." "Me too. And the company. Jennifer's already filing a motion to dismiss, but she says it'll take months to get a hearing." Liam's throat felt tight. "Elena, I don't have the money for this. If they won't. And even if they try, the company's covering your defense. I told you that." "That's not in my contract." "Then we're amending it today." "Liam, listen to me. This is Richard throwing a tantrum. He knows he doesn't have a case. He's just trying to scare us into settling." "It's working." Elena was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. "Are you okay?" "No." "Yeah, me neither." They sat in silence, connected by the phone line and a shared disaster. "Can you come in today?" Elena asked finally. "I think we need to meet with the legal team, figure out our strategy. I need to pick up Sophie at 3. We'll be done by then." Liam closed his eyes. "Okay, I'll be there in an hour." The legal meeting was brutal. Jennifer laid out the case methodically, what Tech Venture was claiming, what they'd actually have to prove, where the weak points were. David sat in the corner looking like he wanted to throw something. Rachel took notes, her expression carefully neutral. Elena sat at the head of the table, arms crossed, jaw tight. "They're alleging that Liam fabricated evidence to sabotage the deal," Jennifer said, "which is nonsense, but they're going to try to paint him as a disgruntled employee with an axe to grind." "I've been working here for a month," Liam said. "What axe would I have?" "They'll claim you were trying to justify your position. Make yourself indispensable by creating problems that didn't exist." "That's insane. Doesn't matter. If they can create enough doubt, make you look biased, it muddles the waters." Jennifer flipped through her notes. "The good news is your analysis was rock solid. Everything you found is verifiable. The bad news is Richard's lawyers are very good at turning facts into narratives." Elena leaned forward. "So what's our move?" "We file a motion to dismiss on grounds that they haven't stated a valid claim. We argue that postponing a deal based on legitimate due diligence isn't breach of contract, and that Liam's analysis was protected opinion based on public information. And if the motion fails, then we go to discovery, which means months of depositions, document requests, and legal bills." The room went quiet. David spoke up from the corner. "What if we settle?" Elena's head snapped toward him. "Absolutely not." "I'm not saying we should. I'm asking what it would look like if we did." Jennifer shrugged. "They'd probably ask for a cash payout and a non-disparagement agreement, maybe force us to revisit the Tech Venture partnership." "Which puts Richard back in the game," Elena said flatly. "No." "Elena, we need to think about this practically. A protracted lawsuit could cost us more than a settlement. Not just money, reputation, board confidence, employee morale." "I don't care. We're not rewarding Richard for filing a baseless lawsuit." David's jaw tightened, but he didn't push. Liam sat quietly, feeling like a bomb that had already gone off. This was his fault. He'd found the evidence. He'd brought it to Elena. He'd triggered the chain of events that led to this room, this lawsuit, this disaster. "Liam," Elena's voice cut through his spiral. "What are you thinking?" He looked up. Everyone was watching him. "I'm thinking I should have stayed invisible." Elena's expression softened. Don't do that. If I hadn't dug into the ownership structure, we'd be in partnership with Richard right now, and you'd be watching him dismantle everything from the inside." She leaned forward. "You did the right thing. This is just the cost." "Easy for you to say. You're used to fights like this." "And you're not?" Liam met her eyes. Not anymore. I left this world to get away from exactly this kind of thing. The silence that followed was heavy. Finally, Jennifer cleared her throat. I need both of you to prepare for depositions. They're going to ask about your working relationship, your communication, every conversation you had about tech venture. I need you to be consistent, detailed, and honest. When? Liam asked. Probably 4 to 6 weeks. Depends on scheduling. 4 to 6 weeks of waiting. Of looking over his shoulder, of wondering if every decision he'd made in the past month was about to be picked apart by hostile lawyers. Liam stood. I need to go. Sophie's school lets out soon. Elena stood too. I'll walk you out. They rode the elevator down in silence. When the doors opened to the lobby, Elena followed him outside into the crisp afternoon air. You're angry, she said. I'm not angry. You're something. Liam stopped on the sidewalk, hands in his pockets. I'm scared, Elena. I'm scared that I just dragged myself and my daughter into something that's going to blow up our lives. It won't. You can't promise that. No, but I can promise I'm not letting Richard use you as collateral damage. She stepped closer. Whatever happens, we face it together. Okay? Liam wanted to believe her, wanted to trust that this would work out, that they'd win, that everything would be fine. But he'd learned a long time ago that wanting something didn't make it true. I need to go, he said quietly. Elena nodded, something like hurt flickering across her face before she could hide it. Liam walked to the bus stop and didn't look back. The next 2 weeks were a blur of anxiety and forced normalcy. Liam went through the motions: breakfast with Sophie, reviewing contracts, answering Jennifer's questions for the deposition prep. But everything felt hollow, like he was watching his life happen to someone else. Sophie noticed. You're quiet, Daddy, she said one night at dinner. Just thinking about work, Bug. Is work bad? Work is complicated. She frowned, pushing peas around her plate. Do you still like it? Liam looked at his daughter, 6 years old, too smart for her own good, watching him with those brown eyes that saw too much. Yeah, he said. I still like it. It wasn't entirely a lie. Elena texted him every day. Small things, mostly. Updates on the case, questions about contracts, occasionally just checking in. How's Sophie? Good. She's learning multiplication. Smart kid. Gets it from her mom. One night, she called instead of texting. I need to ask you something, she said, voice tight. Okay. If you could go back, if you could undo walking into my office that night, would you? Liam sat on his couch in the dark, the TV playing something he wasn't watching. I don't know, he said honestly. That's fair. Why are you asking? Because I keep wondering if I ruined your life by dragging you into this. You didn't drag me. I chose to help. And now you're being sued for $50 million. They're not going to win. But the fact that they can try, the fact that you have to deal with this at all. She broke off. I'm sorry, Liam. I'm really sorry. It's not your fault. Feels like it is. They sat in silence, the phone line humming between them. Do you want to come over? Elena asked quietly. Not for work, not to talk about the lawsuit, just to not be alone. Liam closed his eyes. He should say no, should keep distance between them, especially now, with everything so tangled and complicated. Sophie's asleep, he said instead. I'll send a car. You can be back in 2 hours. 20 minutes later, a black sedan pulled up outside his building. Liam left a note for Mrs. Chen, who he knew checked on Sophie sometimes in the evenings, and got in the car. Elena's townhouse was lit up when he arrived, warm light spilling from the windows. She opened the door before he could knock, wearing sweatpants and an oversized sweater, hair in a messy bun. Hi, she said. Hi. She stepped aside to let him in. The place looked slightly more lived in than last time. A throw blanket on the couch, a half-read book on the coffee table, dishes in the sink. Sorry it's a mess, Elena said. It's not. It's not what you're used to seeing. I live with a 6-year-old. This is pristine. Elena smiled, some of the tension leaving her shoulders. Wine? Please. They sat on the couch, glasses in hand, and for a while neither of them spoke. Just sat in the quiet, letting the weight of the past weeks settle. I hate this, Elena said finally. I hate that Richard gets to do this. File a garbage lawsuit and force us to waste time and money defending ourselves. That's the point. I know. Doesn't make it less infuriating. Liam took a sip of wine. Jennifer thinks the motion to dismiss will work. Jennifer's optimistic. You don't think it will? Elena shrugged. I think the judge could go either way. And even if it gets dismissed, Richard will just try something else. He's not going to stop. So what do? We fight, we keep our heads down, we do the work, and we don't let him win. She said it with conviction, but Liam could hear the exhaustion underneath. When's the last time you took a day off? He asked. Elena laughed, short and sharp. I don't remember. That's not healthy. Says the guy who works until midnight every night. That's different. I have a kid to support. And I have a company to save. Liam looked at her, really looked. At the dark circles under her eyes, the tension in her shoulders, the way she held herself like she might shatter if she relaxed for even a second. You're allowed to be tired, he said quietly. You're allowed to admit this is hard. Elena's eyes went bright. She looked away quickly, blinking hard. If I admit it's hard, she said, voice rough, then I have to admit I don't know if I can do this. And if I don't know if I can do this, then what the hell am I even doing? Liam set his wine down and moved closer. Not touching, just close enough that she knew he was there. You're doing what you have to do, he said. Same as me, same as everyone who's trying to keep their head above water. I'm supposed to be stronger than this. Says who? Says everyone. My board, my employees. My dead father who built this company and trusted me to keep it alive. Your dead father isn't here, and the people who are here see you working yourself to death trying to live up to some impossible standard. Elena turned to look at him, tears sliding down her cheeks now, unchecked. I'm so tired, Liam. I know. And I'm scared, which I'm not supposed to be, but I am. Yeah, me too. She leaned into him then, and Liam put his arm around her shoulders. She didn't cry, exactly, just sat there, breathing hard, letting herself be held. They stayed like that for a long time. Eventually, Elena pulled back, wiping her eyes. Sorry, that was unprofessional. We're not at the office. Still, Elena. Liam waited until she looked at him. It's okay to be human. She laughed, watery and tired. I'm out of practice. Yeah, me too. Something shifted between them then. The same thing that had been building for weeks through contracts and lawsuits and late-night conversations. Elena's eyes met his, and Liam saw the question there. He should leave. Should go home to Sophie, to the safety of distance and professional boundaries. Instead, he leaned in. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, like they were both afraid of breaking something. Then Elena's hand came up to his face, and the kiss deepened, and everything else fell away. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Elena rested her forehead against his. We probably shouldn't have done that, she whispered. Probably not. Are you going to regret it? I don't know yet. Elena laughed softly. Honest. It's all I've got. They sat like that for another moment. Then Liam pulled back, running a hand through his hair. I should go, Sophie. I know. Elena walked him to the door. At the threshold, she caught his hand. Liam? Yeah? Whatever this is, I'm not sorry it happened. Liam squeezed her hand. Me neither. The car was waiting outside. Liam got in, and as they pulled away, he looked back to see Elena standing in the doorway, silhouetted against the warm light inside. He'd just crossed a line he couldn't uncross, and he had no idea where it led. Sophie was still asleep when he got home. Mrs. Chen had left a note saying everything was fine. Liam threw it away, brushed his teeth, and lay in bed staring at the ceiling. His phone buzzed. Thank you for coming over. Eat any time. Get some sleep. You too. Liam set the phone on the nightstand and closed his eyes. But sleep didn't come for a long time. The deposition was scheduled for a Tuesday in late November. Liam spent the week before going over his testimony with Jennifer, who drilled him with questions until he could recite his analysis in his sleep. They're going to try to rattle you, she said. Make you defensive. Don't take the bait. Answer the question, nothing more, and stay calm. What if they ask about Elena? What about her? Liam hesitated. They hadn't talked about the kiss. hadn't defined whatever was happening between them. But it was there, a third presence in every conversation. Our working relationship, he said carefully, whether I was biased. You were doing your job. Your personal feelings, if any, are irrelevant to the quality of your work. Jennifer's expression didn't change, but Liam got the sense she knew more than she was saying. The deposition took place in a conference room at Tech Ventures' lawyer's office, all glass and chrome and aggressive modernity. Richard wasn't there, but his lead attorney was, a woman named Patricia Vaughn who looked like she ate junior associates for breakfast. Liam sat across from her, Jennifer beside him, a court reporter in the corner. State your name for the record, Patricia began. Liam Carter. And your current occupation? Financial consultant for Voss Technologies. How long have you held that position? About 6 weeks. Patricia's eyebrows rose slightly. 6 weeks? And prior to that? I worked in building maintenance. As a janitor? Yes. So 6 weeks ago you were cleaning toilets and now you're advising a major tech company on multi-million-dollar deals. That's quite a career jump. Jennifer cut in. Is there a question? Patricia smiled, cold and sharp. How did that happen, Mr. Carter? How does a janitor become a consultant? Liam kept his voice steady. I have a background in corporate finance. Ms. Voss hired me based on my experience. Your experience from 7 years ago. Correct. Before you left the industry to, what, mop floors? Before I left to raise my daughter. Patricia made a note. Let's talk about your analysis of the tech venture deal. You concluded that my client's ownership structure was designed to deceive. Is that accurate? I concluded that the ownership structure was layered in a way that obscured Richard Carmichael's involvement. Obscured. Interesting word, not illegal, though. I didn't say it was illegal. But you presented it to Ms. Voss as a reason to terminate negotiations. I presented it as relevant information she should consider. Information that conveniently made you look valuable, made your position seem necessary. Jennifer leaned forward. Objection. That's argumentative and calls for speculation. Patricia waved a hand. Withdrawn. Mr. Carter, did you have any personal animosity toward Mr. Carmichael? No? You're sure? Because according to our information, you were present during the initial negotiations when Miss Voss rejected Mr. Carmichael's first offer. I was cleaning the floor outside her office. I overheard an argument and inserted yourself into it. I offered assistance. Uninvited. Yes. Patricia leaned back, studying him. Why would you do that? Risk your job, step into a situation that had nothing to do with you? Liam met her eyes. Because I recognized what was happening, and I knew I could help. Or because you saw an opportunity. An opportunity for what? To ingratiate yourself with a wealthy, powerful woman. To turn a janitorial job into something more lucrative. The implication hung in the air, ugly and deliberate. Jennifer's voice was ice. That's completely inappropriate. I'll rephrase. Patricia's smile didn't waver. Mr. Carter, what is the nature of your relationship with Elena Voss? Liam's heart hammered. He could feel Jennifer's warning look without seeing it. Professional, he said. Just professional? Yes. You've never socialized outside of work? We've had a few meals together, discussing business. Just business? Yes. Patricia made another note, and Liam knew she didn't believe him. Knew she'd dig until she found something. The deposition lasted 4 hours. By the end, Liam felt wrung out, every word he'd said dissected and turned into something it wasn't. When it was finally over, Jennifer walked him out. You did fine, she said. Didn't feel fine. They're fishing, trying to find an angle. But you were consistent, and that's what matters. Liam stopped on the sidewalk outside the building. She asked about Elena. I know. If they find out what exactly? Liam looked at her. Jennifer's expression was carefully neutral, professionally curious. Nothing, he said finally. There's nothing to find. Jennifer nodded slowly. Good. Keep it that way. At least until this case is resolved. She left, and Liam stood alone on the sidewalk, feeling like the ground had shifted under his feet. He texted Elena. Deposition's done. How bad? Could have been worse. That's not comforting. It's honest. A pause, then. I'm sorry you had to go through that. part of the job. Still. Liam stared at the phone, thinking about Patricia's questions, about the line he and Elena had crossed, about how much harder this was going to get if anyone found out. We need to talk, not about work. The three dots appeared, stopped, appeared again. Tonight? Yeah. Your place? I'll be waiting. Liam pocketed his phone and headed for the bus. He had no idea what he was going to say, but he knew they couldn't keep pretending this was simple. That night, sitting in Elena's living room with the city lights glittering through the windows, Liam tried to find the words. This is complicated, he started. Elena, curled on the other end of the couch, nodded. I know. The lawsuit, our working relationship, the power dynamic. I know. If anyone finds out, they'll use it against us. Make it look like I hired you for the wrong reasons, like you're biased. Yeah, Elena pulled her knees up to her chest. So what do we do? I don't know. That's not helpful. I'm trying to be honest. I know. I'm sorry. She looked at him, eyes serious. What do you want, Liam? Not what's practical or safe. What do you actually want? Liam thought about Sarah, about the promise he'd made to never let work consume his life again, about Sophie, who deserved a father who was present. But he also thought about the way Elena looked at him, the way she made him feel like he mattered, like he was more than just a single dad barely scraping by. I want this, he said quietly. Whatever this is. But I want Sophie to be okay, and I want us to not destroy each other in the process. Elena's smile was sad. That's a lot of wants. Yeah. She shifted closer, reaching for his hand. What if we're careful? Keep things separate. Work and personal. Don't let anyone know until the lawsuit's resolved. That could take months, so I know, but if we can just hold on until then, would that work? Liam laced his fingers through hers, feeling the warmth of her skin, the steadiness of her grip. I don't know, he said, but I'm willing to try. Elena leaned her head against his shoulder. That's all I'm asking. They sat like that for a long time, holding each other in the quiet, knowing they were making a choice that could blow up in both their faces. But making it anyway. Because sometimes the risk was worth it, even when you couldn't see the ending. The weeks that followed were a careful balancing act. At work, Liam and Elena were consummate professionals. They communicated through Rachel, kept meetings brief and focused, never let their guards down in front of others. Outside of work, they stole moments when they could. Late dinners at Elena's place after Sophie was asleep. Occasional lunches at quiet restaurants far from the office. Text messages that said more than they probably should. It felt like living two lives, and Liam wasn't sure how long he could keep both of them going. Sophie, thankfully, seemed oblivious. She was happy, thriving in school, excited about the upcoming holidays. Liam held on to that, the normalcy of bedtime stories and homework help and Saturday morning cartoons, but in the back of his mind, the lawsuit ticked like a bomb. The motion to dismiss was denied in early December. Jennifer called to deliver the news, her voice carefully neutral. The judge wants to see evidence. We're going to discovery. What does that mean? Liam asked, though he already knew. Months of document production, more depositions, and a trial date, probably sometime next spring. Liam closed his eyes. Great. I know this isn't what you wanted to hear, but we have a strong case, and Richard's team is going to have to prove actual damages, which they can't do. You sound confident. I am, cautiously. After she hung up, Liam sat at his kitchen table and tried to process what this meant. Months more of this. Of looking over his shoulder. Of worrying that someone would find out about him and Elena. Of living in limbo. His phone buzzed. Heard from Jennifer. You okay? Not really. Want company? Sophie's home, then I'll bring dinner. See you in an hour. Liam stared at the message, warmth spreading through his chest despite everything. Okay. When Elena arrived, she had takeout from the Thai place Sophie loved and a bag of cookies from the bakery down the street. Sophie lit up when she saw her. Miss Elena! Over the past weeks, Elena had become a familiar presence. She was careful with Sophie, never overstepping, always respectful of Liam's boundaries. But she was also kind, funny, genuinely interested in Sophie's dragon drawings and multiplication homework. Sophie adored her, and watching them together, Liam felt something shift in his chest, something that felt dangerously close to hope. They ate dinner at the kitchen table, Sophie chattering about her upcoming school play, Elena asking questions like she actually cared about the answers. After Sophie went to bed, Liam and Elena sat on the couch, close but not touching, aware that the walls were thin and Sophie sometimes woke up. "She's great," Elena said softly. "Yeah, she is. You're a good dad. I'm trying." Elena turned to look at him. "I mean it. She's happy, confident. That doesn't happen by accident." Liam's throat felt tight. "Thanks." They sat in comfortable silence for a while. "I've been thinking," Elena said finally, "about what happens after. After the lawsuit? After everything. Assuming we win, assuming Richard backs off, what then?" Liam knew what she was really asking. Where does this go? "I don't know," he said honestly. "I haven't let myself think that far ahead." "Why not?" "Because thinking ahead means hoping, and hope is dangerous when everything's this fragile." Elena reached for his hand. "What if I told you I'm willing to risk it anyway?" Liam looked at their joined hands, then at her face, open, vulnerable, terrified. "I'd say you're braver than I am. Or more reckless." "Maybe both." Elena smiled, small and sad. "I've spent my whole life playing it safe, building walls, keeping distance, never letting anyone close enough to hurt me. And you know what? I'm 30 years old and completely alone. So maybe reckless is exactly what I need." Liam pulled her closer, wrapping his arm around her shoulders. She melted into him, head against his chest. "We'll figure it out," he said, even though he wasn't sure he believed it. "Promise?" "I'll try." It wasn't much, but it was all he could offer. And for now, it was enough. The break came from an unexpected place. It was mid-January, 3 months into the lawsuit, when David Park knocked on Liam's office door with a folder in his hand and an expression that looked almost apologetic. "Got a minute?" he asked. Liam gestured to the chair across from his desk. "What's up?" David sat, setting the folder down carefully. "I've been going through our financial records from the past 2 years, part of the discovery prep." "Okay, and I found something." He opened the folder, revealing a series of spreadsheets covered in highlighted numbers. 6 months before Richard approached us with his first deal, he made a series of investments, small amounts, spread across different funds, different holding companies. That's not unusual for someone like him. No, but the pattern is. David pointed to a specific cluster of transactions. Every single one of these investments is in companies that either compete with us or supply us. He wasn't just diversifying, he was positioning himself to control our entire ecosystem before he ever walked through our door. Liam leaned forward, studying the numbers. He was setting up the trap 6 months in advance? At least. Maybe longer. Can we prove it was intentional? That's the tricky part. On its own, it just looks like smart investing, but combined with the tech venture structure and the timing of his original offer, David met Liam's eyes. It establishes a pattern, shows premeditation. Liam's mind was already racing. This changes everything. That's what I thought. I sent it to Jennifer an hour ago. Jennifer called an emergency meeting that afternoon. Elena, David, Liam, and 2 associates from the legal team crowded into a conference room while Jennifer laid out what David had found. "This is exactly what we needed," she said, pointing to the investment timeline projected on the screen. "It shows Richard wasn't just an opportunistic investor. He spent months, possibly years, building a framework designed to corner Elena's company. The tech venture deal wasn't standalone. It was the culmination of a long-term strategy." "Can we use it in court?" Elena asked. "Absolutely. It goes to the heart of their claim. They're arguing we acted in bad faith by terminating negotiations. But if we can show Richard's entire approach was built on deception, that he was never a good faith partner to begin with, it undermines their whole case." One of the associates spoke up. "It also opens Richard up to potential counterclaims. Antitrust violations. Conspiracy to monopolize." "Let's not get ahead of ourselves," Jennifer interrupted. "But yes, this gives us leverage we didn't have before." Elena was staring at the screen, arms crossed. "So what's our move?" "We file an amended response. Include this evidence. Force Richard's team to respond. And then Jennifer smiled, sharp and predatory. We offer to settle. Liam frowned. I thought we weren't settling. We're not. But they don't know that. We approach them with this evidence, make it clear we're willing to go public with it, and see if they blink. And if they don't, then we go to trial and bury them. The room went quiet. Elena looked around the table, her expression unreadable. Then she nodded once, decisive. Do it. The settlement offer went out the following week. Jennifer kept it simple. Drop the lawsuit, sign a mutual non-disparagement agreement, and walk away. In exchange, Voss Technologies wouldn't pursue counterclaims or publicize the investment pattern. Liam expected Richard to fight, expected more depositions, more legal maneuvering, more months of grinding uncertainty. Instead, Richard's lawyers responded within 48 hours. They accepted. The news came through a text from Jennifer, matter-of-fact and anticlimactic. Settlement signed. Case dismissed with prejudice. It's over. Liam was at home when he got the message, helping Sophie build a Lego castle on the living room floor. He stared at the screen for a long moment, trying to process what he was reading. Daddy, you're not helping, Sophie complained. Sorry, Bug. He set the phone down and focused on the castle, hands steady even though his heart was hammering. It was over. 4 months of stress, of looking over his shoulder, of worrying that one wrong word would destroy everything. Over. He picked up the phone again and called Elena. She answered on the first ring. You saw? Yeah. We won, Liam. We actually won. Her voice was shaking slightly, caught between disbelief and relief. Yeah, Liam said again, because he couldn't think of anything else to say. Jennifer wants to do a team dinner tomorrow night. Celebrate. You should come. I'll need to find someone to watch Sophie. Bring her. Bring Mrs. Chen if you want. I don't care. I want you there. Liam smiled. Okay. I'll be there. After they hung up, he sat on the floor beside his daughter, watching her carefully place a turret on top of the castle. Is work good now? Sophie asked without looking up. Yeah, Bug. Work is good. Good. You smile more when work is good. Liam pulled her into a hug, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. I love you. You know that? I know, Daddy. You tell me every day? Good, don't forget. The celebration dinner was at an upscale restaurant downtown, the kind of place Liam had gone to regularly when he worked at Hartman and Lyle, but hadn't set foot in for years. Elena had reserved a private room, and the whole team was there. Jennifer and her associates, David and several other executives, Rachel, even a few board members who'd supported Elena through the fight. Sophie was the only kid, but she didn't seem to mind. She sat between Liam and Mrs. Chen, coloring on the paper tablecloth while the adults talked and laughed and passed around plates of food. Elena gave a short speech, thanking everyone for their work, their loyalty, their willingness to fight instead of fold. When she mentioned Liam, her eyes found his across the table. None of this would have been possible without Liam Carter, she said, who saw what others missed, who had the courage to speak up, and who refused to back down even when things got hard. Thank you, Liam, for everything. The table erupted in applause. Liam felt his face heat, uncomfortable with the attention but grateful for the acknowledgement. After dinner, while Sophie showed Rachel her dragon bracelet, and Mrs. Chen chatted with David about their shared love of gardening, Elena pulled Liam aside. Walk with me? She asked. They stepped out onto the restaurant's balcony, the Seattle night cold and clear around them. The city stretched below, lights twinkling like stars trapped on Earth. I have something to ask you, Elena said, hands wrapped around her wine glass. Okay. The consulting arrangement has worked well, better than I expected, but it's still part-time, still temporary. She turned to look at him. I want to offer you a permanent position, VP of Strategic Development, full-time, full benefits, salary that actually reflects what you're worth. Liam's breath caught. Elena, before you say no, just listen. I know you left this world for a reason. I know you prioritize Sophie above everything else, and I respect that. So the position comes with conditions. You set your own hours. You work from home as much as you want. If Sophie needs you, you leave. No questions asked. But when I need your brain on something important, you're there. That's generous. It's fair, and it's what I need. Someone I trust who understands this world but isn't corrupted by it, who can see the traps before we walk into them. She paused. Someone who makes me better at this job instead of worse. Liam looked out at the city, thinking about the past 4 months, about how it had felt to use his brain again, to be good at something that mattered, about the difference between surviving and living. He thought about Sophie, who was happy and healthy and surrounded by people who cared about her, about the financial security a position like this would bring, about not having to worry every month whether the bills would get paid. And he thought about Elena, about dinners at her place, about the way she laughed at his terrible jokes, about the feeling of her hand in his. "Can I think about it?" he asked. "Take all the time you need. I mean, can I think about it for like 24 hours? Not months?" Elena smiled. 24 hours works. They stood in silence for a moment, close enough to touch, but not quite touching, aware that they were still technically in public. "The lawsuit's over," Elena said quietly, "which means we don't have to hide anymore, if we don't want to." Liam's heart kicked up. "Is that what you want? To not hide? I want to see where this goes without constantly looking over my shoulder. I want to have dinner with you and not worry about who sees us. I want—" She broke off, then continued softer. "I want to try, really try. If you do." Liam reached for her hand, lacing their fingers together. "Yeah," he said, "I do." Elena's smile was worth every moment of uncertainty that had led them here. Inside, through the glass doors, Liam could see Sophie showing off her dragon bracelet to anyone who would look. Mrs. Chen was laughing at something David said. The team was relaxed, celebrating, finally able to breathe. "I should get Sophie home," Liam said. "It's past her bedtime." "I know." Elena squeezed his hand once, then let go. "Think about the offer. Let me know tomorrow." "I will." They went back inside together, and Liam collected Sophie, who was fighting to keep her eyes open, and Mrs. Chen, who was carrying a to-go box of desserts the restaurant had insisted she take. On the bus ride home, Sophie curled against his side, half asleep. "I like Miss Elena," she mumbled. "Yeah, why's that?" "She's nice, and she makes you happy." Liam looked down at his daughter, her dragon bracelet catching the light, her eyes already closed. "Yeah," he said quietly. "She does." That night, after Sophie was asleep, Liam sat at his kitchen table and made a list. Not a pros and cons list. He was past that. Just a list of what mattered. Sophie, her happiness, her stability, her future, his own sanity, his ability to be present, to not burn out, to maintain the balance he'd fought so hard to find. The work. Whether it challenged him, whether it made a difference, whether he could do it without losing himself. And Elena. Whatever they were building, whether it was real, whether it could last. He stared at the list for a long time. Then he picked up his phone and called her. "That was fast," Elena answered. "I thought you needed 24 hours. "I do, but I wanted to ask you something first." "Okay." "If I take this job, the permanent position, what happens if it doesn't work out? Between us, I mean." Elena was quiet for a moment. "Then we figure it out like adults. Keep things professional. Make sure it doesn't impact the work." "You really think we could do that?" "I think we'd have to. I'm not losing you as a colleague just because a relationship didn't work out. And if it does work out," he could hear the smile in her voice, "then we'll figure that out too." Liam closed his eyes, feeling something loosen in his chest. "Okay." "Okay, you'll take the job? Or okay, you're still thinking?" "Okay, I'll take the job. Assuming we can negotiate the hours and the work-from-home arrangement." "Done. I'll have Rachel draw up the paperwork tomorrow." "Just like that?" "Just like that." Elena paused. "I'm glad, Liam. Really glad." "Me too." "Get some sleep. We'll celebrate properly this weekend. Somewhere Sophie would like." "She'd vote for the aquarium." "Aquarium it is." After they hung up, Liam sat in the quiet kitchen, his life arranged in a new pattern around him. A real job. A real salary. A relationship with someone who saw him as more than just a father barely keeping his head above water. It felt like standing on solid ground for the first time in years. The official announcement went out the following week. Liam Carter, promoted to Vice President of Strategic Development. The board approved it unanimously, partly because his track record spoke for itself, partly because several board members owed their positions to the fact that Richard's takeover had failed. Liam moved into a larger office, though he rarely used it, preferring to work from home where he could be there when Sophie got off the bus. His salary tripled. He paid off the last of Sarah's medical bills, bought Sophie new shoes without checking the price tag, and started putting money into a college fund that wasn't just wishful thinking. The work itself was challenging but manageable. He reviewed contracts, advised on deals, occasionally sat in on negotiations when his presence added value. Elena consulted him on major decisions, trusted his judgment, listened when he pushed back, and slowly, carefully, they figured out how to be together. It wasn't perfect. Elena still worked too much, still struggled to turn off the CEO part of her brain. Liam still worried about balancing work, and Sophie still had moments where he wondered if he was repeating old mistakes. But they tried. Really tried. Elena came to Sophie's school play in March, sat beside Liam in the uncomfortable auditorium chairs, and cheered when Sophie delivered her 3 lines as Dragon number 2. Afterward, they went out for pizza, the 3 of them, and Sophie chattered about the performance, while Elena listened like it was the most important thing she'd heard all day. In April, Liam brought Sophie to the office for Take Your Kid to Work Day. She spent the morning drawing dragons at his desk while he worked. Then Elena gave her a tour that was really just an excuse to show Sophie all the cool views from different floors. By May, Elena was having dinner at Liam's apartment twice a week. Nothing formal, just showing up with takeout or ingredients for a meal she'd found a recipe for. She and Sophie would cook together while Liam did the dishes, and the apartment felt full in a way it hadn't since Sarah died. One evening, after Sophie was asleep, Elena and Liam sat on the couch, her feet in his lap, both of them tired from a long week. "Can I tell you something?" Elena said. "Always. 6 months ago, I thought my life was over. The company was on the verge of collapse. Richard was circling. I was alone and exhausted and terrified. And then you walked into my office." She turned to look at him. "You didn't just save the company, Liam. You reminded me that there's more to life than just surviving, that it's okay to want things, to let people in." Liam's throat felt tight. "You did the same for me." "Yeah?" "Yeah, I spent 3 years making myself invisible because I thought that was the only way to keep Sophie safe, keep us both safe. And then you offered me a chance to be visible again, to matter." He reached for her hand. "I'm glad I took it." Elena shifted closer, resting her head on his shoulder. "Me too." They sat like that for a long time, the apartment quiet around them, the city humming beyond the windows. It wasn't perfect, but it was real, and that was enough. Summer brought changes. Sophie turned 7, and they threw her a birthday party at the park. Kids from school, Mrs. Chen, a few of Elena's team members who'd gotten to know Sophie through office visits. Elena helped organize the whole thing, including a dragon-themed cake that Sophie declared the best thing she'd ever seen. Liam watched Elena help Sophie open presents, watched her laugh at the kids' games, watched her fit into his life like she'd always been there. Later, after the party, after Sophie was asleep with her new purple dragon plushie clutched in her arms, Elena and Liam sat on his apartment's small balcony, drinking beer and watching the sun set. "I've been thinking," Elena said. "That's usually dangerous." She smiled. "Probably, but I'm thinking it anyway." "About what?" "About the future. About what I want it to look like." She turned to face him. "I want it to look like this. You, me, Sophie, family dinners and birthday parties and school plays. Real life, not just work." Liam's heart was hammering. "Elena, I'm not asking you to marry me or anything. I'm just saying, I'm all in. However slow we need to go, whatever shape this takes, I'm in." Liam set down his beer and pulled her close. "I'm in too." "Yeah?" "Yeah." They kissed, soft and certain, and Liam felt something click into place. This was what he'd been afraid to hope for. What he'd thought he'd lost forever when Sarah died. Not a replacement, not a do-over. Just a different kind of love, built on different foundations, with different people, but real, and worth fighting for. By September, they'd fallen into a rhythm. Elena spent most weekends at Liam's apartment, though she kept her townhouse for the nights she needed space or had to work late. Sophie had her own room at Elena's place, decorated with dragon posters and filled with books. The company was thriving. Without Richard's interference, Elena had been able to pursue partnerships that actually aligned with her vision. The board had stopped questioning her decisions. Investors were calling, asking to get in on whatever she was building, and Liam was part of it, not the center, That was still Elena's company, her vision, her fight. But a trusted voice, a steady hand, someone who could see the traps before they closed. One October evening, Liam was working late at the kitchen table, reviewing a contract for a new distribution deal, when Sophie padded out of her bedroom in her pajamas. "Can't sleep, bug?" "I had a question." "Okay, what's up?" Sophie climbed into the chair beside him, her dragon bracelet, now worn and faded but still her favorite thing, sliding down her wrist. "Is Elena going to be my mom?" Liam's breath caught. He set down his pen carefully. "What makes you ask that?" "She's here a lot, and she does mom things, like helping with homework and making breakfast and coming to my stuff. Would that be okay with you? If she was?" Sophie considered this seriously. "I already have a mom. In the pictures." "You do, and nothing will ever change that." "But I could have two moms? One who's not here anymore and one who is?" Liam pulled her onto his lap, hugging her tight. "Yeah, bug, you could have two moms." "Okay." Sophie leaned against him, satisfied with this answer. "I think that would be good. Elena's nice, and she makes you laugh." "She does, doesn't she? Are you going to marry her?" "I don't know. Maybe someday. Would that be okay?" "Will I get to be in the wedding?" "Absolutely." "Okay, then it's okay." She wiggled off his lap and headed back to bed, the whole conversation apparently resolved in her 7-year-old mind. Liam sat at the table, staring at the contract without seeing it, his heart full. He called Elena. "Sophie just asked if you're going to be her mom," he said when she answered. Silence. Then quietly, "What did you say?" "I said maybe, and that she could have two moms, one who's not here anymore and one who is." "And she was okay with that?" "More than okay. She wanted to know if she could be in the wedding." Elena laughed, the sound shaky. "We're not even engaged." "I know, but she's already planning her dress." More silence. Then, "Liam? Yeah? I love you. I don't think I've said that yet, but I do." Liam's eyes burned. "I love you too." "Good. That's good." They sat on the phone together, not saying much, just breathing, connected across the city by words they'd finally been brave enough to speak. The holidays came, and for the first time since Sarah died, Liam's apartment felt full. Elena helped Sophie decorate a tree, the two of them arguing good-naturedly about ornament placement while Liam watched from the kitchen. Mrs. Chen came over for Christmas Eve dinner, bringing homemade dumplings and stories about her grandchildren. On Christmas morning, Sophie woke them at dawn, dragging them both to the living room to see what presents had appeared. Elena had gotten Sophie a set of books about dragons from around the world. Sophie immediately declared it the best present ever, and spent the rest of the morning reading them out loud while Liam made breakfast, and Elena pretended she didn't have tears in her eyes. "Thank you," Liam told her later, while Sophie was distracted with her other gifts. "For what?" "For being here. For caring about her. For caring about us." Elena kissed him softly. "There's nowhere else I'd rather be." And watching her help his daughter build a Lego dragon castle, Liam realized something. He'd spent years thinking that wanting more than survival was selfish, that the safest thing was to make himself small, invisible, untouchable. But safety wasn't the same as living, and sometimes the bravest thing you could do was let yourself be seen, let yourself want things, let yourself build something new on the ruins of what you'd lost. It didn't mean forgetting Sarah. It didn't mean betraying the promises he'd made. It just meant accepting that life was longer than he'd thought, and there was room in it for more than one kind of love. The new year brought new deals, new challenges, new rhythms. Liam continued to work from home most days, his office in the Apex Tower sitting largely empty. He'd go in for important meetings, for negotiations that needed his presence, for the occasional team lunch. But mostly, he worked from his kitchen table, Sophie doing homework beside him, the life he'd built humming along smoothly. Elena still worked too much, but she was getting better. She took Sundays off now, spent them with Liam and Sophie. She'd started seeing a therapist, working through the pressure she'd put on herself for so long. She laughed more easily, slept better. One evening in February, almost a year after Liam had first walked into her office, Elena showed up at his apartment with a serious expression. "We need to talk," she said. Liam's stomach dropped. Those 4 words never meant anything good. Sophie was at a friend's house for a play date, so they had the apartment to themselves. Elena sat on the couch, and Liam sat beside her, bracing for whatever was coming. "I've been thinking about the future," Elena started. "About what I want, what you want, what's best for Sophie." "Okay." "And I realized something. I'm ready, if you are." Liam frowned. "Ready for what?" Elena pulled a small box from her pocket. Liam's heart stopped. "I know this is backwards," Elena said, flipping open the box to reveal a simple silver band. "I know traditionally the guy asks, but I'm not great at traditional, and I'm tired of waiting for things to happen to me instead of making them happen." She took a breath. "Liam Carter, you're the best person I know. You're kind and brilliant, and you make me want to be better. You've given me a family when I didn't think I deserved one. And I want to spend the rest of my life being Sophie's other mom and your partner and building something real with you." She met his eyes. "Will you marry me?" Liam couldn't speak. His throat had closed up completely. "If you need time to think about it," Elena started, suddenly nervous. "Yes," Liam managed. "Yes, absolutely yes." Elena's face broke into the brightest smile he'd ever seen. She pulled the ring from the box, simple, understated, exactly his style, and slid it onto his finger. Then she kissed him, and Liam kissed her back, and somewhere in the back of his mind he thought about how far he'd come from that night a year ago when he'd knocked on her office door. He'd been invisible then, afraid, just trying to survive. Now he was visible, present, living. Not because his life was perfect. It wasn't. Not because everything was easy. It never would be. But because he'd chosen to be seen. Had chosen to risk everything for the chance at something real. And it had been worth it. Every moment of fear, every moment of uncertainty, every risk he'd taken, worth it. When they finally pulled apart, Elena was crying, and Liam realized he was too. "Sophie's going to lose her mind," he said, laughing through the tears. "She helped me pick out the ring." "What?" "I took her shopping last week. Told her I was thinking about asking you. She said you'd say yes, and that I should get something simple, because you don't like fancy things." Liam shook his head, amazed. "You asked my 7-year-old's permission? She's not just your daughter, Liam. She's going to be my daughter, too. I wanted her to be part of this." And that, more than anything else, told Liam he'd made the right choice. They picked up Sophie together, both of them grinning like idiots. Sophie took one look at Liam's hand and shrieked, "You said yes! I knew you'd say yes!" She launched herself at both of them, and they stood in the middle of the sidewalk, wrapped in a 3-person hug, while other parents walked by smiling. That night, the 3 of them had dinner at Liam's apartment. Nothing fancy, just pasta and garlic bread, and talked about what a wedding might look like. "Small," Liam said. "Just people we actually care about." "And dragons," Sophie added. "There have to be dragons." Elena laughed. "We can probably manage dragons." Later, after Sophie was asleep, Liam and Elena stood on the small balcony watching the city lights. "You know what the crazy thing is?" Liam said. "What?" "A year ago, if someone had told me my life would look like this, I wouldn't have believed them. I was so sure the best I could hope for was just getting by, surviving until Sophie was grown. And now? Now I'm getting married to an incredible woman, doing work I'm good at, raising a kid who's happy and healthy. I have a future that's more than just bills and exhaustion." Elena leaned into him. "You deserve it, you know, all of it." "So do you. We both do. And maybe that's the point. Maybe we spent so long thinking we didn't deserve good things that we almost missed them when they showed up." Liam kissed the top of her head. "Well, I'm glad we didn't miss this." "Me too." They stood in comfortable silence, and Liam thought about all the small choices that had led here. The decision to knock on Elena's door that first night. The decision to take her job offer. The decision to let her in, to let himself hope, to risk his heart on something uncertain. Every choice had been terrifying. Every choice had been worth it. The wedding happened in June, on a Saturday afternoon at a small venue near the water. 30 people, mostly friends and family, plus Sophie's entire second-grade class because she'd insisted. Sophie wore a purple dress with green accents, dragon colors, and served as ring bearer with a seriousness that made half the guests tear up. Mrs. Chen cried through the whole ceremony. Rachel caught the bouquet and immediately announced she was throwing it back because she wasn't ready for that kind of pressure. Liam's vows were simple. "I promise to be present, to show up, even when it's hard, to choose you every day for as long as we both live."
Elena's were longer, more emotional, and ended with, "You taught me that being strong doesn't mean being alone, that asking for help isn't weakness, that the best things in life are worth the risk. I love you, Liam Carter, and I'm so glad you knocked on my door." There wasn't a dry eye in the house. The reception was casual, barbecue and dancing, and Sophie teaching Elena's CFO how to do the dragon dance she'd invented. Liam danced with his daughter, with his new wife, with Mrs. Chen, who told him Sarah would be proud. And maybe she would be. Maybe she was somewhere, somehow, glad that he'd found a way forward. Glad that Sophie had someone who loved her like a mother. Glad that Liam had learned to live again instead of just survive. As the sun set and the party wound down, Liam stood at the edge of the venue, watching Elena laugh with a group of Sophie's friends, watching his daughter show off her dragon bracelet to anyone who would listen. This was his life now. Not perfect, not without struggles or hard days or moments of doubt, but real and full, and exactly what he'd needed without knowing it. Jennifer approached, wine glass in hand. "You did good, Carter. Thanks for everything. We couldn't have done it without you. You would have figured it out. You always do." She clinked her glass against his beer. "To new beginnings." "To new beginnings." Sophie ran up then, grabbing Liam's hand. "Daddy, come dance. Elena says you owe her one more song." Liam let himself be pulled to the dance floor, where Elena was waiting, and they swayed together while Sophie danced circles around them. And Liam realized something he'd been too afraid to acknowledge for years. Happiness wasn't something you earned or deserved. It wasn't a reward for suffering or a prize for being good enough. It was just a choice. A series of small, terrifying choices to show up, to be seen, to let people in, to build something new from the pieces of what you'd lost. He'd made himself invisible for so long, thinking that was safety. But this, being seen, being known, being loved, this was what safety actually felt like. Not the absence of risk, but the presence of people who'd catch you if you fell. Elena whispered in his ear, "What are you thinking about?" "About how lucky I am." "Good answer." They danced until the music ended, until Sophie's energy finally flagged, until the last guests filtered out into the summer night. And then they went home, not to Liam's small apartment or Elena's sparse townhouse, but to the house they'd bought together, the one with a yard for Sophie and an office for Liam and enough space for all of them to breathe. Sophie fell asleep in the car on the way there. Liam carried her inside, Elena following with the leftover cake, and they tucked their daughter into bed together. "Thank you," Elena whispered, adjusting Sophie's blanket. "For what?" "For letting me be part of this. For trusting me with her. With you." Liam pulled her close. "Thank you for knocking me out of invisible." They stood in Sophie's doorway for a long moment, watching her sleep, her dragon bracelet still on her wrist. Then they went to their own room, to their own bed, and fell asleep wrapped around each other. Outside, the city hummed. Inside, 3 people who'd all been lost in different ways had found each other. And that, Liam thought as sleep pulled him under, was the only story that mattered. Not the rags to riches narrative. Not the triumph over adversity. Not even the love story, though that was part of it. Just the simple truth that sometimes, when you're brave enough to be seen, when you're willing to risk your carefully constructed safety, when you choose to show up even though it terrifies you, sometimes you find exactly what you didn't know you needed, and you build a life worth living, one small, terrifying choice at a time.